All right. I did a lot of stuff today. Got up super early because of an earthquake. So we've got a big wrap up of week 2 in the NFL, including best win, worst loss, and the awards. We've got college football, all the big games. I break those down with Todd McShay. He wants to talk young quarterbacks. I think he's going to want to do it all season long. So let's not stop him from doing it. Domonique Foxworth as well. Some Tua stuff with him. And more importantly, he is officially a screenwriter, and he's got a TV show coming out this week on FX. So a lot to get to, and life advice and a Monday night parlay for you. NFL Week 2, let's run through it. The headlines, probably the Kansas City game against Cincinnati. Chiefs win it with a 51-yard field goal. Look, the NFL is filled with coulds. Could Kansas City be 0-2 if the Baltimore catch stands? Still some stuff would have to happen in that game. And then with the pass interference call, that was a big play in this one. Sure, but they've beaten two of the better teams in the AFC. Start the season, yes, I know they're combined 0-4, but I believe in Cincinnati, and I still believe in Baltimore despite the records. But they just always seem to have the answers, Kansas City. And even though last year there was something they actually, in those moments where you're like, here we go, best thing in the NFL, Mahomes with the ball, trying to get the win, where it didn't happen, and they didn't seem to have the answers in the regular season that they figured out in the playoffs. But look, this isn't breaking news here, despite the fact that statistically, if you want to dig through 2 weeks, Mahomes has the same QBR as Justin Fields and Jaden Daniels after 2 games. But it's his 76th win in 98 starts. Brady had 76 wins through 100 starts. So good chance of Mahomes passing that. So I'm sure some would say the answers are that they got a pass interference call on 4th and 16 to set up the field goal to win this. If that's incomplete, Cincinnati wins. But when it comes to defensive backs getting there early on the receiver, I always feel like it's a bit of a gray area. Replay makes everything look like pass interference. You could argue that Rice acted a bit, that he went straight up and the defensive back went straight up and then he made it look worse. But as far as whatever my definition of being there early and it being okay and being there early and it feels a little too early, maybe all of us are different. Like I can allow a little early, but on that replay, I thought the defensive back was there early. So I know it's really frustrating, but I ended up feeling really good about Cincinnati after this one. I don't care about the loss. The tight end wide receiver group, Ewo T. Higgins out again, is going to be really good. Josivash, the receiver who had the touchdown, this big kid from Princeton, I believe. Jermaine Burton had a play in this one, the rookie from Bama. I've always liked Gesicki at tight end. I don't know why it hasn't really clicked for him, but I thought he was terrific yesterday. You've got all the other the tight ends combined for 14 catches, 151 yards. So that's a new wrinkle with Cincinnati's offense. And then on the defensive side, Trey Hendrickson absolutely dominated this game at defensive line. He had 2 sacks, another 3 penalties because of his constant pass rush pressure. The Chiefs ended up benching their rookie left tackle, Kingsley Suamatia, who Romo was just like, I'm calling him Kingsley all day. Sorry, Sir Ben. They actually benched him for Morris. Morris wasn't much better. I don't know if that left tackle thing is going to be something the Chiefs have to worry about. But again, the great quarterbacks will probably throughout the course of a season go, okay, maybe my left tackle isn't as good. Now I have to adjust and think about that and have the internal clock. And that's what the great ones do. And Mahomes is certainly that. I feel like Hendrickson needs kind of a badass makeover. I don't know if it's going longer hair. I don't know if it's going sleeves, maybe some Ultimate Warrior stuff on the arms, Bosa style. But, this league right now is just littered with guys, whether it's all the time we talk about Garrett, Watt, Bosa, Parsons. Hutchinson was out of control yesterday for Detroit. Some of the numbers that he's putting together very early on in his career, like the trajectory of where he is now in comparison to the other great edge people, just outstanding numbers for him. But Hendrickson just feels like he's not really, I'm not saying he's Micah Parsons, but he was so good in this game. He went dark visor, though, so maybe we're getting there with this makeover a little bit. I also really like Burrow. 2 plays that are frustrating. The fumble that leads to the 6 points after a great defensive effort from the Bengals. And then taking the sack was a safety blitz. He didn't see it on the 3rd down. I mean, that's a little tougher maybe with Spagnuolo thinking on a huge down case, probably bringing this pressure, and I have to be aware of it. He also had a drop from Yosivas on 2nd and 6 prior to that, which would have moved the chains, and maybe Cincinnati wins this football game. But despite those two plays, I think over the course of the game, it's hard for me to explain it. I think all of us that have watched this game a lot should come to the same conclusions. Like, of all the stuff that you're watching on Sundays with quarterback play, where you just think this guy's got no shot on 3rd and long, like nothing. If the first read isn't there, it's done. Like, it's amazing that at the NFL level, you have that many quarterbacks that you just go, I don't know. And with Burrow, I don't feel any of those things. I mean, people had plenty of Burrow jokes after the week 1 loss to New England, a game that they shouldn't lose, with Higgins being out, Jamar Chase thing not feeling right, whether or not it's because he doesn't have the contract. He takes a terrible penalty in yesterday's game. But considering how deep that group is between tight ends and receivers, and then watching Burrow, like, over the course of 3 hours, I just look at it and go, you're going to complain about this guy? I thought he was terrific, and I think it's not great to be 0-2, and here we are 0-2 again with Cincinnati, but I just left the game feeling really good about who they could potentially be based on that game. So that could have been the best win, because I'm going to do best win, worst loss every week for you. It could have been best win. Maybe it would have been if Cincinnati pulls it out. There's a lot of options. Let's run through them. The Saints dominate Dallas, a Dallas team that I think is going to be really good this year, 44-19. New Orleans started this season scoring on its first 15 possessions between week 1 and week 2. Okay. We had mentioned that there was just stuff with quarterback play where I was wondering what they were seeing, and I'm not educated enough to know, okay, that was what was supposed to happen here, or all these different things. I don't know that many of us are, especially with the access that we have to things. But there was a really good tweet from Mina Kimes, who talked about the too high safety surge that we're seeing in the league that could explain some of the frustration that we have with quarterbacks, because the evolution of this game, okay, you guys are just going to pass it all the time. Fine. Like, I remember constantly worrying about whether or not the New England Patriots are going to play a 4-3 or a 3-4 front. You're like, oh my God, what are they going to do? Like, what's their base defense? Like, who cares? It's as many defensive backs as you can put out there, and maybe speedier linebackers. Like, okay, cool. If you have an awesome nose tackle who's 0, who can line right up over the center. But I mean, does it really even matter that much anymore? So when you look at this too high safety rate, week 1 was 60% defensively. 5 years ago, that was 38%. So it starts to make a little bit of sense. The defense is just going, we don't care. Like, are any of you guys going to run the football? Well, New Orleans is going to run the football. Mike Sando, who keeps track of the Cook Index, which is basically how aggressive is your pass play calling, that has nothing to do with like the actual score and time left in the game. So it's while the game is still undecided, right? Although Cincinnati had a win probability of 68% in the 3rd quarter. Shocking. They did not win the game. By the way, it's not an argument about probabilities. It's an argument about irrelevant content. But when I look at that too high safety thing, and then you go, okay, well, maybe people are going to start running the football. Is that the zag, or the smarter team's going to decide, all right, fine, bigger personnel, more tight ends. Let's just throw them out there. Let's start running the football. Well, New Orleans is doing that. Clint Kubiak, the new offensive coordinator, if you look at the Cook Index, so that means if you're on the bottom end of this, it means you're not just out there slinging the football all over the place. New Orleans is 28th. San Francisco, by the way, 29th. So is this the counter that we're going to see some of the smarter teams just decide we're going to start running the football again here? They're going to play too deep that much. Maybe that's something to look for this season. Okay, other possible best wins. Kyler Murray, look out. It's anyone in Arizona go, man, this is what it was like with Hopkins. Because Marvin Harrison, after 1 catch for 4 yards in the first game of his career against Buffalo, goes for 4 for 130. The first touchdown in the back of the end zone is absurd. And Kyler finished with a 98.3 QBR, which is the highest regular season QBR for quarterback in a game since Dak going back to 21. They just dominated the Rams. The Rams had no answers for them whatsoever. And maybe it's Kyler fully healthy. Maybe it's Kyler with this coaching staff. Maybe it's Kyler with a guy like Harrison, because it looked awesome. And that's why last week I said, for all the people that I still wonder about at the position and the doubt that I have, he's the most talented of any of those guys. And what I really liked about his game against LA is movement with a plan versus movement with a prayer, where if you're back there running around, like, it's cool, you can escape and you're really fast and all that kind of stuff. But are you mobile going into something as opposed to mobile and having no idea what you're doing whatsoever? And I thought it was much better in week 2. Another option could be Cleveland. Not the most exciting game, 18-13 over Jacksonville. It wasn't about Deshaun Watson, who, by the way, not being terrible was an improvement in week 2, but it was about a Cleveland defense that I still think is one of the better units on that side of the football in the league. We should all expect that with that talent, and something that Cleveland, in those rough games where the offense doesn't feel like it's clicking, it's still something that they can kind of bank on. And that's what we saw. Trevor Lawrence is 5 of 11 for 16 yards in the first half. He's lost now 7 straight starts, and they're at Buffalo and at Houston the next 2 weeks. Could it be Tampa Bay starting 2-0 for the 4th straight season? I figured once Detroit went up 16-13, that would probably be it. They had moved the football really well all game long. But Baker responded, man. Just one of those football guy, screw it drives. I've got to do this. And he ends up immediately responding on the next series. And I was actually surprised, because you're watching games and the tendency is to think, okay, whoever you think is a little bit better is okay. I'm going to go with them. And then they're going to figure this thing out. They'll straighten it out. I even thought at some point, like the way Dallas is built, getting down big, they're built better than other teams to come back. That did not happen in that one either. But for Detroit, I'm not super worried about how alarming the red zone inefficiency was. They were 1 of 7 on red zone possessions for touchdowns. Last year, they were the number 2 team as far as touchdown percentage in the red zone in the NFL. Only San Francisco had touchdowns at a higher clip than Detroit. And it's the exact same team on offense, and probably just better because the young guys are a little bit more seasoned. So an abysmal red zone performance from them. You could say not the greatest game from Goff, unless you think last year was like a fluky Goff, like Auburn Tigers year. I have this weird Auburn thing where I just think they're really weird. Maybe we'll get to that a little bit later. But they outgained Tampa 463 to 216, and they held Tampa to 2 of 10 on 3rd down. So a frustrating one because of the red zone stuff, but I'm not going to worry about it because, again, the Lions numbers from last year are terrific, and it's all the same guys. And Jameson will be better. Tackles will be better. Laporta will be even better. The running back should be even better. So I don't know why that would be bad all of a sudden. Minnesota, how about them for best win? Sam Darnold revival. I'm going to bring up more to him, but I'm just thinking about like the arc of his storyline, because you wonder if J.J. McCarthy would have gotten the start. I don't know if O'Connell would have done that. I know what they can all say after the fact if he's not hurt, but chances are J.J. McCarthy's playing at some point this season. I don't know if that would have been week 1 or not. And again, I'm not super interested in a quote telling me something that would have happened that wasn't an option after he was being hurt. But really the pass rush was the story here against the San Francisco O-line that, kind of depending on who you listen to, like, we know the top end of the talent, but is the entire unit actually as good as maybe we think it should be? And they look dominant, especially running the football in week 1 against the Jets. So they got all over Purdy, 6 sacks, 8 tackles for loss. And despite Fred's best efforts with the pick, which was ridiculous, the fumble at the goal line, Minnesota ends up winning this one. It could also be Vegas, down 23-13 in the 4th quarter at Baltimore. This was one of these games where you're trying to keep track of a massively cluttered 1 o'clock window where you're thinking, all right, I probably don't have to watch that game as much. And then you're like, no, wait, I do. They outgained Vegas 383 to 260. They both had a turnover, so it wasn't really the turnover game. It was 2 other things. 11 penalties for Baltimore for 109 yards and a shank punt that set up the go-ahead field goal. So that actually could be the worst loss if I wanted to do that. Lamar ends up being the first MVP to start his next season 0-2 in like over 20 years. But I guess I'm not, like, it's a great win for Vegas, no question. I guess I'm just not really sure what to do with that one. I'm going to go with Arizona just because of the Kyler part of this. That if this is the kind of, look, he's not going to be 98.3 every week because that would be impossible. But if he can get back to somebody who a few years ago, I feel like he is the only thing that's keeping Arizona in some of these games. And I know if you've been listening, like I just was off of him, more so just because I always think he's going to get hurt. But that changes the Arizona, whatever its expectations. Like, I'm not going to start saying, hey, look out for them to win the conference. But I just thought it was such a positive. He was so good. And the Harrison part of this. And it was just absolute domination against a Rams team that I do think is pretty good, although the offensive line has some problems. Worst loss. It's not Baltimore. It's the Giants. They are now, in losing to Washington, the only team to lose a game scoring 3 touchdowns and allowing 0. It did happen in overtime for another game in 1989. So that's the only other time it's ever happened. They lost their kicker. They may have won it. They lined up at 4th and 4 at Washington's 22, and they couldn't kick, and they had to go for it. They didn't. They ended up losing the game. A couple of awards here. The What the Fuck Are You Doing award goes to Tennessee head coach Brian Callahan for screaming to his quarterback, the Iceman, Will Levis. That's right. I am dangerous. What the fuck are you doing? When Will Levis, on 3rd down, 3rd and goal, all right, up 7-zip, tries to lateral it. Like the fact that he, even after that Bears pick 6 last week, was like, I don't know, let's get creative again down here. Like, that's alarming now. Like, dude, are these, of all the stuff you have to process, these are still running through the mental Rolodex. Callahan was pretty hard on his quarterback afterwards. He said he's an adult, I think. I mean, it sounded like somebody scolding a child that had done something wrong. You're old enough to know better than this. So yeah, he gets that award. Another nominee for the WTF would be Bears head coach Matt Eberflus. 2 challenges that were terrible. The first one was right in front of him on a completion. Okay. There should be enough people with all of these tablets around to go, don't. And then the other one, it felt like he just got bullied into it by his defensive back. And you probably didn't want to use that challenge at that time. Couple things with him last night. Yikes. Speaking of Houston and Chicago, yes, it was better for Caleb Williams. It was a much better start. It turned into chaos. A lot of blitzing. So we're giving D'Amico Ryans the Laura Oakman Change It Up Week to Week award look, where they blitzed Caleb Williams, giving him a different look. 41% of his dropbacks last night. He was terrific when he wasn't blitzed. He was not good at all when he was, which is to be expected of young quarterbacks. So D'Amico's like, let's just keep doing this all the time. I don't know why anybody would do anything different against young quarterbacks. You just keep blitzing them over and over again. And so even though the first pick with Caleb, considering down and distance and game situation, that was the kind of pick I was talking about this summer. I'm like, I want to see a few of those. You know, I don't want to see 3rd and long in a huge spot, limited possessions the rest of the game. You have to find a way to move the football down the field. Okay, cool. 3rd and 15. I'll throw it 2 yards behind the line of scrimmage. Good luck, dude. It's like a linebacker and three defensive backs right behind you. Enjoy this catch and the muscle cramps after this completion. The second pick, he missed more on one where Moore looked really frustrated. I think the best part about last night's game was the primetime Nico awareness night, where Nico Collins goes off, just a beast out there. He's getting so big. He looks even bigger now. 14 for 252 on the season. He has 52 more yards receiving than any other player in the NFL. A Bill Simmons question. Is Kathy Bates still good? All right, final thing here. This is the Get Up pre-show meeting award. Sitting there with Greeny, running through all the action, coming up with talking points, topics. Would you rather have Sam Darnold for the rest of his career or Anthony Richardson? Ooh. Alert the people in graphics. I don't even know if I'm going to answer that question. But the question, if I were trying to figure out a way to program 3 hours of a TV show, if I were a producer and I didn't have to go out there and answer it, I'd be like, hey, what do you think? What do you guys think about this one? It seems incredibly unfair, and I don't want to do this to a bunch of the young guys. I mean, watching the Bo Nix game, I thought at some point he had thrown 140 passes in that game because it was on one of the other screens, and every time I looked up, Bo Nix drop back, pass. Saw some drops too. A lot of passes, a lot of empty calories in there as well. Just chucking it all over the place. By the way, on the other side, Justin Fields, he had a 2nd and 18 throw down the sideline, which was my favorite throws of the entire weekend. It was called back because of a hold. He had another sideline. Like, I know they're not scoring any touchdowns. The Steelers have 1 on the season. So the Russell Wilson part of that of like, hey, you may not want to upset the apple cart. Well, I mean, it's because of the defense and who they've played, why they're 2-0. So they're not actually scoring touchdowns. But there's some throws from Fields. If you go back, I mean, look, if you go back and look at his stats at Ohio State, you're going to go, my God, like this is off the charts production from him. And it's not an arm thing. It's a decision thing with him at the Bears. But man, some really nice throws this season, even though it's not necessarily leading to 6 points. But the Richardson part of it was brutal yesterday. It was a brutal game at the position for the potential future of the Colts. He is, unlike other quarterbacks, young ones, he's throwing it. He's averaging 13.7 air yards per attempt, number one in the NFL. Not completing a lot of them, but he's not afraid. He'll get it down the field, which is actually something you think like, okay, this is great. We don't have, a 10-year Kirk Cousins short of the sticks run. Although I give Kirk a lot of credit for last year, how tough he played. The Colts defense is really the main issue. I mean, the Richardson thing was not pretty yesterday, but this run defense is atrocious. It's last in the NFL. They're allowing 237 yards per game on the ground against them, 37 yards worse than the second worst team, Carolina Panthers. Also not a pretty outing from their quarterback. They gave up 213 to Houston. They gave up 164 yards rushing in the first quarter to Green Bay, 237 at the half. And then Green Bay's just like, we didn't even really need to do anything. We're not worried about your offense. And with Malik Willis back here, we're just going to keep handing the ball off. I mean, it could have been a lot worse. It ended up at 261. I know DeForest Buckner and the injury part of it, but God, they are getting gashed. Let's start with the college football stuff. In Lexington, Georgia survives at Kentucky, a 13-12 win. Georgia drops from 1 to 2 in the polls. All the first place votes, well, not all of them, but the majority of them going to Texas. Probably the first thing that I want to get to here is the great example of how things can change week to week. If your team is terrible, you're likely going to be terrible all season. Maybe you'll have 2 or 3 weeks where you're in it because of turnovers. But if you have some level of talent, like Kentucky does, I think this went from, I was thinking about what is the quarterback room like after that South Carolina game? What's the O-line group like after that South Carolina game? Like, could I do like 50? Is the future of content $15 pay-per-view? You get to sit in the O-line meetings the week after it's one of the worst 3 hours of protection you see from a big time program. You know what I mean by Power 4, that kind of thing. In reality, I would have paid $15 to watch the message from the O-line coaches and everything that went along in putting together a game plan to fix what was so bad again. And some of you are listening to me like, dude, you're still talking about the South Carolina Kentucky game? Yeah, I am. To make what we saw on Saturday, even though Kentucky lost, a positive. There's a lot of reasons why I think coaches go crazy because they know everybody has a little bit more effort. And they want that maximum effort, even though the thing that they're asking is probably physically impossible, but they want you to have the mindset of doing that all the time. I think these 2 games are why coaches also go crazy. Be like, how could we be so bad in this area of a game and then be this prepared and ready to go against Georgia? And look, it's not like Kentucky's lighting up the scoreboard here. It just was a big improvement, which is something I had to remind myself of the emotion of a potential upset by Kentucky against Georgia. Really, it's 6-3, dude. Okay. So you imagine Georgia's going to come back, and they were able to come back. So there was a lot of stuff that I was looking at with that. The second thing was I thought they played scared on offense a little. It was kind of like that team that's up 6 or 8 points at the end of an NCAA tournament game. And, maybe it's a 15-2 matchup or something. And the 15 starts going 4 corners. And you're like, well, you're still going to have to probably score a couple times here. So it's cool that you're up and you may get to the next weekend, or just to the next game, only 2 days later. 2 possessions that bothered me. I thought they just really were totally happy having a field goal and being up 6-3 at the end of the first half. The way they were running plays, what they were doing, it just felt like they had made a decision early on. Hey, we're just getting 3. We're getting 3 here. And when you're going up against Georgia and you're looking for that upset, you have to think differently. And then the punt, 3 minutes left of the game. They're at the Georgia 47. It's 4th and 8. They had all their timeouts left. In the moment, I understood the decision. I actually think the play calling at the end of the first half bothered me more than this one. People were way more upset because they're in Georgia territory. It's 4th and 8. You just got to go for it. You might not be getting the football back. I think they got back with 9 seconds left, so they kind of didn't get it back. With the timeouts, I kind of understood why they did it and the reality of, like, do you really think they're going to figure out a way to convert on 4th and 8 at that point? Like, do you think they're going to do that? And that's likely what Kentucky was thinking, is that we're not really going to get this. Then they got a false start and backed it up even more, but they were lining up to punt on 4th and 8. But people were really upset about that one, even though I thought the end of the first half was more egregious because it was more decisions. By the way, this game took forever. Just a ton of nothing happening and it taking forever. LSU South Carolina took 4 hours and 15 minutes. I love Andy Staples. He's made one of the worst points I've ever heard, in that if you love football, why would you not want more of it? That's not more of it. It's just longer. I like working out. I don't want to be there for 3 hours. Some people love having sex. You also got to rake the leaves, and there's shit to do, right? So, Georgia playmakers. Man, I'm spending a lot of time on this game. Let's keep it moving. I'm taking longer than the game itself. Top 3 wide receivers. There's not much of a resume there. You don't see it making a huge impact during the course of the game. I've said this before about their wide receiver group, and then they won 2 national titles, so they can get through it. They also had incredible tight ends, including Brock Bowers, who, by the way, reminding people on a Sunday why he looked like the best player in all of college football at some point. They had Ladd. You know, you could bring up, hey, what about George Pickens? He had 5 catches his junior year, so he wasn't really even part of the program during that run. So maybe it's just the annual Georgia wake-up call, like in 23, where they were tied with Auburn going into the fourth quarter. Maybe like 22, where they're down 16-6 at Missouri, Missouri team that finished 6-7. But 13 points is the fewest for a number 1 team versus an unranked team since Bama beat Tennessee 12-10 in 2009. Quick aside on Bama. Loved their defense. I'm going to talk more about that with Todd McShay. September 28th, Georgia now a 2.5-point favorite at Bama, who again just dismantled Wisconsin, a Big Ten country. Texas rolls against UTSA. Loser. First losing pick of the season for your boy, 56-7. Texas has outscored its opponents 139-19 through 3 games. Ewers goes down with the abdomen injury. Enter Arch, 9 of 12, 223, 4 passing touchdowns, added a rushing touchdown. It was a moment when the people who have not paid attention to it thought, oh, this guy can run. He doesn't look like the other Mannings. That's right. Texas is number 1 for the first time since 2008. I remember 2008. October 2008 into the first day of November 2008. Texas 4 straight weeks played. Number 1 Oklahoma win. Number 11 Missouri win. Number 7 Oklahoma State win. And then lost at Texas Tech, who was number 6 in the country Halloween weekend. Lubbock, I know because I was there for the greatest sporting event that I've ever attended in person. That was tough sledding. Tough sledding. And then remember all that ridiculous tiebreaker stuff that was happening with the Big 12. So, yeah, last time Texas was ranked number 1. Oklahoma stays at 15. I watched a lot of Oklahoma Tulane. This was a game. 24-19 in the fourth quarter after a Tulane pick 6 from sophomore quarterback Jackson Arnold, who has the resume. A lot of people, when Dylan Gabriel moved on, were like, that's fine, we get Jackson Arnold. I actually think he's a tough kid. I think he's a baller. He's running the football a hell of a lot. So that part of it's cool. The passing part, I mean, look, it was a bad pick 6, especially when you consider everything. Also a great play by the linebacker there. But we knew the O-line because of it being, I believe, 80% transfers. And the collective, like, game started number. They threw up a graphic during the game. I wasn't able to find it again. I'm just saying, like, it looks like it's a work in progress. And O-lines can just, through coaching, in the course of a season, playing more games together, all of a sudden be like, we didn't love this part of our game, and it really came together. That can happen. Well, it better come together quick, because against Tennessee's front, that will be the thing with Tennessee, Oklahoma that I would be looking at the most. Yes, Nico is a blast, and I do like Jackson. But that front for Tennessee against an O-line that I think had issues with Tulane, that's going to be something. Early lean, perhaps, right, but part of the story. Oregon stays at 9. No issue with that. Thought they should have dropped after the first 2 weeks against Boise and Idaho, but this looked like Oregon again. We talked about the sack numbers. We talked about the yards per carry. Well, they didn't give up any sacks in a September Civil War. Civil War 9-14 earlier this year for you. Not going to go on a rant about that. And look, they ran it for 7.5 yards per carry, 240 on the day, 0 sacks allowed, as we mentioned, only 2 tackles for loss. Dylan Gabriel was almost perfect in this one, 28-24. And number 20, the running back, Jordan James, he had an option to go out of bounds to the left, and he said, nope, fuck this. I am going to smash into you, and you're going to feel it. And he looked like he took out 2 defensive backs just by staying in bounds and gaining no ground whatsoever. Smartest play I've ever seen? No, but I loved it. And then he had another play at the goal line where he actually was short of the goal line, so he didn't get the touchdown. He's just bouncing off of everybody. He is looking to hand out punishment on every collision in a game. A&M blowout in the Swamp. I know the final score was 33-20. It was 33-7 at some point. This was just awful day to be a Florida Gator. Swamped out, pouring rain, delay. Place looked empty towards the end, which I don't blame people during the weather part of it. Napier's going with Mertz and Lagway. I hate the quarterback. I don't even know what the point of it. Maybe it's because they don't want Lagway to transfer. Look, they're going to have a Lagway decision on top of everything else, unless it was just the money that brought him in, and that there's no marriage to Napier with all that. Look, I don't even know enough about that. Like that's for you guys to figure out in Gainesville. You're far more educated than I would be on all this. But I think the cool part for A&M is that Wigman's out with the shoulder injury. Tried to give it a go before in warmups. You could see that he was definitely in pain. And the backup QB, 4-star freshman Marcel Reed, ended up making some really nice plays because A&M just wasn't getting anything going down the field. I don't think they had a pass play beyond 20 yards until this then Thor at tight end, 6'6" kid from Sweden, who I know his name, but we're just going to call him Thor. As bad as it was in Gainesville, it's worse in Tallahassee. They're 0-3. They lost to Memphis. If you look at DJU at quarterback, you go, okay, at the very least, he's played this game long enough to know that in a huge possession here, that these are the things you can't do. They're down 20-12, 2:41 left. Here is the series of plays that happen. Sacked when you can't be sacked. Incomplete. Well, at least don't get sacked again at third down. Get sacked. Ends up at 4th and 22. They punt it back. The final possession, Uyunglele, was 2 of 8. Like, you can sit here and say, whatever that was, that Calzado night against Notre Dame, then I know it was against Bama, but you understand the point for DJ. You go, hey, look, just don't get sacked. Do something an older quarterback would do. And he wasn't even able to do that. So Florida State, they're not the first preseason top 10 team to end up unranked. Matt Brown of The Athletic gave us this note this morning. It said since 1989, an average of 1.7 top 10 preseason teams end up unranked at the end of the season. Florida State looks like a lock for that. Here's the problem for Florida State. They're the only team to start 0-3 as a preseason top 10 against 3 unranked teams. Finally, we'll talk LSU, South Carolina. LSU remains number 16 in the AP poll unchanged. 3 awful calls. The horse collar on Nussmeier wiping out a pick 6 wasn't a horse collar. South Carolina defender grabbed his jersey. Wasn't a horse collar. The offensive pass interference in the slot. Herb Street was beside himself. He was just like, where, I don't even know where it was on the replay. And then the unnecessary roughness after the pick that Nussmeier threw, where he just did not read the coverage right. I think he thought it was man, and the defensive back dropped underneath the pass attempt. And he just couldn't have possibly seen him and make that throw. And then another pick 6 is called off because of Kennard getting unnecessary roughness, just blocking quarterback on a change of possession. So a tough one, South Carolina fan. The refs, that was a bad day for the refs. I've never seen a group screw up the number on who the penalty is on that much. I've never seen that. It was so bad, Herb Street and Fowler were making fun of it, which they should have been. And I can't remember. Oh, no, there was a game week 2 in 89, Bucks, Giants. Remember that? I don't remember that. I don't remember. And so a lot of times, human nature is we can just keep replacing the most recent thing and saying, oh, I've never seen that happen before. Never. That was weird. I think they did it like 6 or 7 times where they would call it the penalty and they'd be like, who was it on? And then it'd be the number who was never even on the field. It'd be like 13. 13's the punter's assistant. He doesn't even really play. They just like him. All right. What else from this? Kennard's best player on the field. Defensive dudes everywhere for South Carolina. I think LSU's okay. That's my summary. Still kind of feel the same about them. I'm worried about the corners. I think the Harold Perkins things looks about, that felt right against South Carolina. That was like, okay, here we go. This is what it's supposed to look like. Going back to when he first came in on the scene, it just seemed like nobody could ever do anything with him. They made, I think, 6 positional changes on defense, moving bodies around. So they're trying to come up with some answers there. They're also, Cade Durham, the freshman running back, was definitely the guy. But I think there's, maybe it's just a lingering thing for me because you guys know, like, I pull for him, which you can make fun of, totally allowed to. This offensive line came into the season like arguably the best offensive line group in college football. And then it's like 3rd and 1. Do they know they're getting it? They just go, hey, it's 3rd and 1, Durham, and now this unit, like, we're not going to screw around? Or is there still some hesitation? Is the physicality and toughness there the way you would expect? Like, the default setting of LSU is, hey, the defense is going to be good. There should be a few corners that are going to be NFL guys. Defensive backs can be NFL guys. A couple of edge guys that are scary as hell. And then they'll be able to grind it out on the ground a little bit. And instead, it just hasn't felt like that, despite still being a lot of talent there. I would ask this, though. Or I would offer up this to future South Carolina opponents, because they also lost this game because their starting quarterback went down with the ankle injury. And Robbie Ashford at his 4th school now, not throwing passes. If Robbie Ashford is in and it's 3rd and 6, he's not going to throw the football. So maybe keep somebody in on him running it, which LSU gave up a huge 3rd down, not being prepared for that. Final thought here. Shout out to Kansas State, looking more like Kansas State that was chosen along with Utah by so many people to win the Big 12 when they completely dismantled my Arizona dreams. A resetting of who Arizona might be after a dicey week 2 and a rough night of having the audience to themselves. And Avery Johnson looking like the top recruit that he was, because before I was like, is everybody just in love with this guy's running style and all that kind of stuff? But nice little effort there from K-State that I thought was worth mentioning to start the show today. We've got Todd McShay. It's Monday. We'll do some college and some pro. I started with Georgia and their win in Lexington, the near upset. I talked about the lack of weapons, and I'll share this with you so the listeners already heard this before, but it's funny, in past years with Georgia, I go, do they have enough at receiver? It's like, you mean the 2 years they won national championships? Like, who cares? Doesn't seem to be an issue. But they also had Bowers, they had Washington, they had Ladd. I don't know. Anything alarming there from what you saw?
Pass protection. Pass protection. I think that was one thing that stood out to me. One of the first games I can remember where I didn't feel like Carson Beck felt comfortable. He seemed agitated. Did you notice that? Like,
a little bit. Kirby was adamant after the game, and I feel like Kirby's more revealing in his comments than a lot of other head coaches, where he just was like, hey, don't even talk to me about the defense, because that's not the issue. And clearly it wasn't. It was like a weird game in that you're thinking, hey, what's wrong with Georgia? And you go, well, Kentucky scored 6 points, so it's not the defense. And Walker, number 11, is absurd for them. But he was adamant that it wasn't really Beck either.
I don't know necessarily. That's why I asked. I'm not pointing it or putting it or pinning it on Beck. I'm just saying, like, I'm so used to watching him. Georgia's running the ball, the play action. It seems like he's in a comfort zone. He gets settled in, sooner in games and stays settled in throughout games more than most college quarterbacks, especially, with their system. Run sets up the play action. It's not this like overly complicated offense. They're not trying to slinging around everywhere. But when they take, they're like very conscientious with their shots. They're very deliberate in what they do offensively. And it's one of the first times I can remember watching and saying, and maybe it was just a surprise because it was Kentucky and coming off that tough loss that Kentucky had the week earlier with South Carolina. I didn't expect Kentucky to agitate, frustrate, get Beck uncomfortable the way they did. And it wasn't necessarily Beck. It was a byproduct of I didn't think pass protection was great. And, they've graduated a lot of good dudes to the NFL, and it's tough. When you're pipelining guys to the NFL, the offensive line can be the toughest. Like receivers, you just plug in, right? Pass rushers are great pass rushers. Linebackers fly to the football and make plays. Corners can cover on an island. Offensive line, more than any other spot on the football field, is about like time played together, continuity, communication. And so I felt like it was one of the first times we've seen during this Georgia run where, they look vulnerable. And you mentioned off air, we were talking Tate, their guard was out. And
yeah, Ratledge gets carted off. I mean, he's preseason All-American.
Yeah.
But
so that's one key. And that, again, no matter
But with Georgia, you figure like, okay, that now you're not going to score.
Right. So, a lot of credit to Kentucky bouncing back the way they did, playing the way they did. It was classic, like Kentucky football. And you got to, yes, the defense played well and didn't give up a lot of points. They struggled to get off the field in the second half, though, at times. Now, I looked up at the end of the game. Kentucky had 23 first downs compared to 12 for Georgia. Kentucky had the ball for 35 minutes compared to Georgia's 25. And like in modern football, we don't talk about time of possession, grinding it out and all that shit. But in a game like this, it was important. And I thought, like in the first half, Georgia was dominant defensively, but you started to see them kind of wear down a little bit and not playing with that same like hair on fire. And I thought they started to lose a little leverage up front. They got moved around a little bit. So I think in the trenches for both sides, there's some room to grow, right? Some like growth spots. And probably if you're Georgia and you're Kirby Smart, you're like, this is a good thing. We escaped we got a narrow victory. We escaped what could have been an ugly loss early in the season. But we've got a lot of coaching points here. And it's going to start up front. It always does, but especially after watching that game and studying that tape for the Georgia's coaching staff, I think the offensive and defensive lines are going to be where a lot of emphasis is placed.
Yeah, and maybe, as I had also mentioned too, maybe this is their Auburn, maybe this is their Mizzou game, and it's not that big of a deal. But the resume of the receivers now without the NFL tight ends to go with it, even though they've recruited incredibly well there at the position over the years, maybe this is just that part of the season where it feels like it needs to get better. Texas, yours goes down, ab injury. Apparently, everybody tells us at the beginning it's not that big of a deal. But Arch Manning, I mean, there's a reason. Some people would argue, hey, the name cranked up his profile a little bit. I remember the first time I saw his high school stats was like, this guy's completely different than what you think of Manning's and now. And I think whether it was in relief 2 weeks ago or what we saw this past weekend where he had to play, 5 total touchdowns. This was the coming out party in a sense, even though it's UTSA. It's just understanding college football fans that may or not paying attention to as much of that stuff, realizing like this guy's completely different than what you'd expect from a Manning. And look, not much competition. The first,
you want to hear something absurd?
Well, look, I mean, just to put through, like, if you look at the stats, like one's a completely blown coverage. The first one is Bond at the line of scrimmage. So it sounds like I'm taking away from it a little bit, but there's a reason, everybody wanted this guy, and he is that talented. Go ahead.
You want to hear something? It's my absurd note of the day. You ready?
I love it. I'm going to write it down.
Arch Manning is the 8th favorite to win the Heisman now. I mean, right? He's throwing like 20 passes or whatever it is. Holy, like what world do we live in? Arch is the 8th favorite. I just heard that this morning.
Yeah, 18 pass attempts, 5 touchdowns.
Yeah. So, yep, top 10. He's one of them.
His rating is 317.8. You don't see
it's
that.
Almost like Vegas. It's Vegas like laughing at just the common person. Well,
what if viewers are really hurt though with the talent of everywhere else at this football team? Like I saw somebody tweet out, I think a media member going, as great as Arch is, they need Ewers to win a national championship. And I was like, you sure about that?
Well, I'll say this. There were some things, and I've not gone back and studied the tape.
Sure.
I just watched the game on TV. There were some throws and some things that I think he missed, like, any quarterback who you're talking about, pass attempts 10 through 18 in his college career. But I liked what I saw, man. Like, usually with quarterbacks coming in with that inexperience, they get, hear noises and see ghosts, and he hung in there. He was tough, and like sitting back and everyone's like, well, why did he stay at Texas? Well, I think it's because he's gotten this experience. He's working with Sark and he's the backup. He gets to learn. And so now he gets his opportunity, and there's some growing that obviously has to happen. But just seeing a young quarterback go in there and hang tough in the pocket, knowing he's going to get whacked, making throws, staring it down. I was impressed. I was impressed with him, and he has a level of mobility that, you just mentioned that you kind of don't expect when you talk about a Manning. I don't know. There's a lot there. If you're Texas, you're thrilled with the way he played. There's a lot to learn from and move forward. But if there was one thing that stood out, it's a guy who's inexperienced coming in the game and hanging in tough, knowing he's going to get whacked and still delivering the football. That's something that it's hard to coach, and knowing that he has that trait is a really great jumping off point.
How much of Bama, Wisconsin did you get to watch?
I watched bits and pieces. Bits and pieces. Like, they looked really good, obviously. They ran the football. I think you're seeing Caleb DeBoer like put his stamp a little bit on this team. I think this is a team that's going to be physical. They've got individual talent on the defensive side that's outstanding. Wisconsin's not much. Like, you bring in like air raid offense. Like, I don't know that Wisconsin knows what it wants to be. But I was impressed to go in that, in that environment on the road, different place than you're used to playing, and to be that dominant. And I thought Milroe, I was impressed with Milroe. I thought that, he showed some development in terms of making good decisions. He was sound with the football. He took, when he took his chances, and they were sound, he did like risk reward better than sometimes he normally does. But receivers are running open. They've got weapons. I think they're a little more talented than I thought, considering all the departures and all, the turnover in that program. I think that if I had two takeaways. One, they've got a little bit more skill talent than I expected. And I think that Milroe's starting to show a little bit more consistency in terms of his decision making.
Yeah, Ryan Williams at receiver, 17 years old. I mean, everybody's been talking about him. He's already got 4 touchdowns. Jam Miller, Haynes at running back. Every now and then the Bama running backs, they were bringing this up during the LSU game with Herbstreit and Fowler, where it's like, hey, where's the last like running back for LSU? Where you go, okay, this guy,
they were talking about
guy, and it was really good. It was really good. And then we'll get to some of the LSU stuff that happened with South Carolina there, but I'm with you on the playmakers. I think Milroe's in the conversation for best running quarterback too, especially like once you're really worried about, hey, what are these guys going to do? And you still have to worry about somebody on the outside. I think the biggest thing that jumped out to me, because I was looking at the mocks, unfortunately I didn't get to see your 25 mock the day after the draft this year, which you were probably thrilled you didn't actually have to do.
Yeah.
But when I was looking at the mocks and kind of just trying to put together a list of like first and second round guys worth paying attention to that I can lose track of, I didn't notice one Bama defender in any first round mocks. Now, maybe I certainly didn't read every mock.
Yeah.
And I took that into the first few games of Bama because I've watched them quite a bit. They feel like they have 7 or 8 clones of 6'2", 230 to 250 guys right now.
Yep.
Where it's not necessarily the overwhelming size that they've had at some of the edge positions in the past, although Dallas Turner's probably on the smaller side in comparison.
Yeah, for what they produce.
Yeah, right. Not that he was small, but I look, man, all I'm telling you is like looking at the Deontay combination there, Deontay Lawson, the linebacker.
Yep.
And then Devontae Smith, the defensive back, and then Quay Russillo, the freshman who's from Montgomery. He's 6'2", 250. He got hurt. It's a lower leg injury, but he's playing a ton as a freshman. It just feels like, I don't know if it's uniform, body type, or whatever, but you'll watch Bama on defense now and be like, wait, that guy's a different guy than the last guy. And then who's that guy? And like that guy's coming in. They just feel like they have these incredibly quick, athletic.
They seem a little faster on that side, right?
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
And it was just, look, Van Dyke goes out, so you knew it was going to be tough sledding for Wisconsin anyway. And they kind of got gashed against South Florida because I think they were just so thrown off from their quarterback just running all over them like he had to start that game. But if that group like collectively gets better, I don't know what the injury is going to be with number 4 there on defense, but it was just really impressive on Saturday. And it felt like, to your point, it feels like it's faster. It feels like
it's going to be a fun
options.
year, right? Like, not to go big picture on you, but
do it.
Like, Bama might not be as dominant as they've been, but I'm starting to feel like there's more parity in the SEC, and we're gonna have like week in and week out battles. Like LSU's really good, but has some vulnerability. South Carolina is a hell of a lot better than I thought, and we can get to that. Tennessee, we talked about last week. I'm excited to see this Tennessee team continue to grow because there's a lot of talent there. The quarterback Nico has a ton of ability. Their tight ends are really good. They've got good weapons. Their offensive and defensive lines are better. I don't know. Just from top to bottom, like Missouri, I know they had a dogfight against South Carolina. I don't think that they're the 6th best team or whatever. They were ranked 6th.
You mean Boston College?
Yeah. Boston College. Sorry, Boston College.
Look, I don't think Boston College sucks. So that's not some game where you go, how is Boston College?
No, Billy O'Brien's got them rolling here. I like it. But my point is, it just, I don't know. It feels like there's a lot more good teams in the SEC and in the country this year. Like USC is better than we expected. Michigan's not great, but Michigan, I can't wait to watch that game coming up. USC, Michigan, Ohio State, we know is loaded. Georgia, we know is loaded. They had a hiccup game against Kentucky, but it feels like we know about Texas as well. Oklahoma's got a big game this week. I don't know. It feels to me like there's a little bit more parity, even though like last week we came on like, all right, there's 3 teams. It's Georgia, Ohio State, and Texas, and then everybody else. But who knows? Like maybe the gap between the top 3 isn't as great as we expected after 2 weeks. And maybe there are more teams in that second like Miami, we talked about them. I don't know. There's a lot of good teams out there this year. And it's a perfect year for it with the first year of the 12-team playoff, right? Like we're going to have a lot of good football teams in the end.
Yeah, I think the Bama example of that's perfect because the standard is that it's flawless, and whether it's USF, whether it's Milroe at times. But yeah, I mean, look, if Bama were in this at the very end, that's not going to be surprising to anybody, despite the schedule, getting cranked up here with some of the expansion stuff. Where some teams, you look at who they're playing and you go, how the hell are you going to navigate that? Whereas when you look at, is it Ole Miss?
Ole Miss is another one I didn't mention.
Yeah. I mean, Ole Miss still has LSU. They've got Georgia. There's one team that like misses everybody. Is it Missouri? It might be their schedule. They have A&M. They've got Bama, Oklahoma. So they're not playing Texas. They're not playing, well, obviously because they're on the other side.
Tennessee maybe? Does Tennessee have a nice schedule?
Yeah, there's one team that just feels like they avoid everybody. No, it's not Tennessee.
Nebraska is another team.
All right. Well, you want to do some Nebraska?
I mean, we don't have to dive deep into Nebraska, but I'm saying their schedule. I think their schedule. I remember watching, and someone made a comment like they're going to be 9-0 when they go play like Ohio State or whoever it is. Yeah,
they're at Ohio State, but now they're also at SC, and they would still finish with Iowa, which you never know. Well, they'll be at the end of the year. Anyway. They'll probably just be good on defense. Raiola, though, let's do a little. I went to the Elite 11. I remember they were like, "Hey, that's the guy. This is the dude." And then he ends up in Nebraska, which I think is a credit to him just going, you know what, I want to make this work somewhere else. He has an easy arm, man. He has a really easy arm. And I love seeing anybody that's that young and that talented. He should be taking more chances. And he's not afraid to just throw it out there and let the receiver make a play. It's probably my favorite part of his game.
Yeah. And I think the thing I appreciate most is how mature he is. Like it is not too big for him. It's like and these quarterbacks these days, it's like, I was listening to Tirico last night on Sunday night, and he had a good point. He was talking about Caleb Williams. He's like, it feels like today, in like today's football world, these quarterbacks have been auditioning since they were like 10, 12 years old. And, Caleb Williams and all the, they showed Caleb like with Peyton Manning at his camp and a different camp.
Although I felt like the way that was like, so Caleb Williams just dialed up Peyton and is like, can I shadow you for the week? It felt a little bit more like it was a picture of him at a camp.
Right. No, it was. But the point was legitimate in that, like,
totally. It was a great point.
It used to be a quarterback from like California or Texas or Florida or wherever. And like, they had to grind it out in some shitty high school football and throw the ball 15 times a week. And hopefully they'd get to a college where they could be developed a little bit better. And then they move on to the NFL and it's all like these big, bright lights and all this stuff. Now it's like you see your son has great talent at like 10, 12 years old and there's access. And there's these 7-on-7 leagues and there's like football year round. Like my son's 10, he's playing an AAU league, that's like travel teams and tournaments all year round, 7-on-7. Edge. He plays some quarterback. He plays quarterback. I don't know. He runs the ball. He's quick, way quicker than his old man. We're not on the Peyton Manning camp, tour here. Trust me. He's my son. He's I love you, Tate, but like there's a cap to the talent level.
Tate,
here.
Is he going to transfer a lot?
It's a great name though for a quarterback.
It is.
Anyway, so I guess with Raiola, like to me, I get that same feeling. Like Caleb was, developed and all. He's been around the game. It doesn't feel too big for him. Listening to him, like even in press conferences, some of his quotes, seeing him on the field, there are certain guys where it doesn't feel too big, and they've got like I got it. And when I watch him, like on the sideline, handling his receivers, talking to his offensive linemen, setting his protections, like he just is more advanced than he should be at this point in his career, maturity-wise, from like personal maturity and then just on the field and the way he's carrying himself. And yeah, like the talent level is outstanding. He's going to be fun to watch for the rest of this year and the next 2 years because I just want to see his development. But when you have a quarterback that you believe in, the way that Nebraska believes in him, it's hard to find that, and they've got an absolute dude. And you want to talk about a point like Friday night? I'm here for it, man. Illinois, big win, coming off a big win at Nebraska Friday night. I can't wait for that game. They may be second, third tier programs and all that, but like it's just another great opportunity when they've got the spotlight on them. How does Raiola, how does he show up? How does he perform? I'm excited to see it.
Yeah, Altmaier quarterback, Ole Miss guy.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to do a Where Are They Now, but I may save that for a slower day. All right, before we go to the NFL, we should probably talk about the South Carolina game. Even though
that was fun, wasn't it?
It was a lot of fun, incredibly frustrating if you're a Gamecocks fan.
Yes.
The officiating was not on your side there. In the open, I said, look, I still think LSU is good, but I think the conversation starts with Kennard at edge. The Georgia Tech transfer, 5 sacks, tied for the most sacks in the country at this point. South Carolina has multiple guys that are really exciting. Like South Carolina is going to get screens throughout the entire season just because of that defense. And who knows if Sellers, who I kind of like a little bit at quarterback, certainly more than Robbie Ashford, it's frustrating for a million different reasons. But what is Kennard? I know you haven't done the deep tape, and these conversations are more in depth months later as we get into next year for you. So it's just hard to, like, every single play you feel like you notice him.
Yeah, he was possessed. I mean, and that defensive line as a whole played great. I mean, they should be so proud of what they did. Like, I just, it's like the only tweet I sent out. I was like this, like, I see you, South Carolina defensive line. Like the effort, forget the talent level for a minute. The effort is what jumped out to me. Like guys just flying around, hair on fire, just refused to be stopped. It wasn't Kennard. He started at Georgia Tech, right? And transferred. Yeah. So he's a transfer. He comes in 6'5", 255, that range, quick, good with his hands, just relentless. And he was blowing up play after play after play. And quite honestly, like, give Garrett Nussmeier, the quarterback, I give him a ton of credit. That's the type of game where a quarterback can go in his shell. And Nussmeier did not. He took his lumps. That's also the kind of game where a quarterback just starts to make dumb throws and feels the pressure and unforced mistakes or forced mistakes. And to hang in there the way he did, I continue to be impressed with Nussmeier. He's not a guy that's getting a lot of love, and we're not first round and all that stuff. But the way he's played early this season, the guts that he's shown in the pocket, the ball placement under pressure, that USC game, I thought he was sensational. I thought both quarterbacks in that game were sensational. I thought he was outstanding in the second half, against South Carolina and kind of figured some things out defensively that they were doing. But again, the story to me was the South Carolina defensive line. And if they can play at that kind of level, who knows? Like they're an outside, like a dark horse to potentially get in is one of the, I haven't looked at their schedule, but that's a good football team. But it's got to be Sellers at quarterback. I think we've learned that, because even when he came out in was it week 1 or week 2 for a little bit, the offense just isn't the same. So I'm not sure what, it's an ankle injury. I'm not sure how long that's going to be, but I like that team. It's easy to root for them, right? It's easy to root for South Carolina for some reason.
Yeah. I've always felt like there's always a couple guys, usually in the secondary, where I'll go, I love that guy. They've always had a couple of receivers that we've talked about over the years, but I think they were picked 13th out of 16 teams in the SEC. And considering how bad the bottom of the SEC has been early on in this year, they're not in that group, but that's not really what anybody wants to hear. Let's do some NFL. Oh, wait. Before we do that, give me your dude of the week. I'll go first. You want me to go first?
No, go ahead.
All right, Jordan James, running back, Oregon. This guy.
Oh, all right, you blew it, but go ahead.
What do you mean?
You went to the same program, but go ahead. Now I'm searching my phone. I want to find somebody else. Go ahead.
You seriously were going to pick him?
No, same program. I was going to go with Dylan Gabriel.
Yeah, he was lights out. Jordan James runs like everybody has insulted his family. On the opposing side, not his teammates.
That's all you got?
Yeah, that's it. I already talked about him in the open.
Oh, okay. You didn't tell me that. Yeah, I mean, Gabriel, I'll just stick with him. I'm not going to waste anyone's time. I just was impressed because I am lukewarm on Dylan Gabriel.
Have you always been lukewarm? Room temperature?
Room temp. And it heats up sometimes, and then it really cools down sometimes, right?
So, okay, did you like Bo Nix better than Dylan Gabriel going into this year? Okay.
Yes. Yeah, right. I did.
This isn't Dylan Gabriel, the pro prospect, though, right?
I just feel like everything's a grind with Dylan Gabriel sometimes. I feel like every fourth quarter comes down, he's made some great plays. He's made some mistakes. I'm worried that he's going to get injured. His body's getting beat up. He scares me. He's the kind of quarterback that like, no. Oh, okay. And like, as a coach, you lose a year off your life every year that he's your quarterback, I feel like. But he brings you a lot of wins and a lot of high moments. But like, I don't know. It's like, he plays great against Texas, and then he'll show. I don't know. I just, everywhere he's been, I just feel like there's these ups and these downs. In the first 2 weeks for Oregon, I was worried, like, here we go again. Like, and it was more their offensive line and different things like that. But Dylan Gabriel had one of his more consistent, he played great. What was he, like 20 of 24, efficient, ran the ball, big runs, made a lot of good decisions. So if he can trend that way, maybe Oregon's got a shot to be the team that a lot of people, including myself, thought that they could be coming into the year. But we didn't see it the first couple of weeks.
Yeah, if I could have gone 2 weeks in, you want any predictions back? Oregon National Championship would be one that I would have wanted back. Feel a lot better about it after this game. For all the reasons you mentioned and the stuff that I had mentioned earlier on. It sounds like Nebraska's your upcoming screen. You can't really say Nebraska's off the radar. And it doesn't have to be off the radar. Like South Carolina, Kentucky 2 weeks ago is not off the radar, but they got a screen because I want to see the D line. I'm going to go with the Hoosiers, 3-0 Hoosiers, just stomping out everyone in their path. Florida International, 31-7. Western Illinois, don't even bother. Leathernecks, 77-3. UCLA, 42-13. And they're doing it with two things. Curtis Rourke, the 6-year stud. This guy's a beast. Tim Couch-esque, 6'5", 223. from Ohio, and then Cignetti, the head coach, who said, I believe at his press conference, any coach that says Google me.
Who said that?
The head coach for the Hoosiers, when he was being introduced, being like, hey, I win. Google me.
Google me.
Google me.
I love that. Cignetti, my boy Kevin Whittle, who used to work with me, is now with the Ravens, is one of their top scouts.
Yeah, so look, it's Charlotte, Maryland, Northwestern.
Guy.
Yeah, so who knows? Hoosiers. I mean, you type in. I tried to Google. I Googled Hoosiers head coach today, and it came up Mike Woodson. So
Google me. Love that.
We need to increase his awareness there a little bit.
I'll give you another screen.
Okay,
I can't beat Google me, but I don't know. I get. Maybe I'm just an '80s baby, and I'm intrigued to see. And it's not like a prove it game or anything like that, but I just want to keep a close eye on Miami this year. 7 p.m. ESPN at South Florida. South Florida can be pesky, as we've seen. 3-0 Miami. This is the kind of game where Miami, in this like 20-year path of the U is back and all this shit, this is the kind of game where Miami can come out and do something stupid, right? Miami's in the great years they've had, they'll go lose to the good program and it'll look ugly. But in those like mediocre years, they'll have a game against a South Florida, where everything's exciting. It's early in the season. They're 3-0. Let's look at their schedule. I want to see their schedule real quick. All right. So you get Virginia Tech next, Cal, Louisville. So it's not like they have anything, but
this schedule is incredible. It's alarmingly easy.
Yes. So you can't trip up in these types of games. On the road, South Florida, kind of a tricky, pesky opponent. They've got Virginia Tech at home, at Cal, at Louisville, Florida State at home, Duke at home, at Georgia Tech, Wake Forest, and Syracuse. You can't screw this up. They could easily go undefeated. I hate to say that, but this is no. I'm not. Tell me what game they're gonna. Tell me what game that they're going to be underdogs in.
None of them.
So I'm just saying, this has one of those feels to before they start conference play.
It's already gotten easier. I mean, Virginia Tech. You started the year going, okay, they're
Florida State
in the mix. They lose to Vanderbilt, although Diego
the only game
Pavia,
that's gotten harder, in my opinion, is Georgia Tech. Maybe
Syracuse, Kyle McCord.
Yeah.
Light show, laser show. I'm telling you, he was so good 2 weeks ago.
Yeah,
he was so good 2 weeks ago. All right, let's do a little NFL here because you have Foxworth jumping, so we don't have to go. Give me the three things that you want to do, and then we'll run through them. Like the things that you most want to talk about. Is it Kyler first?
Caleb,
you want to go young QBs? Go whatever you want to do, dude. We've been doing this long enough. Yeah.
All right. First thing I'm going to throw it. Wait a second. Hold up. Everyone stop. Are the Saints good?
The offense is out of control right now.
Are the Saints good? Because I'm looking at this. Touchdowns on their first 6 drives last week. Clint Kubiak has come in, and they're running that same offense, the zone offense, exploiting the numbers games up front, making every average running back looks really good. Every good running back looks great in this system for the most part. If you look over the years, obviously it's the Denver, now it's Shanahan in San Francisco, Minnesota's running it with Kevin O'Connor, Johnson's running it, Detroit, Green Bay, the Rams. This system is proven and it works. And Clint Kubiak comes in and it's 47 points in the first week. What's your complaint if you're a Saints fan in the first week? We kicked 4 field goals. We didn't finish drives. They come in this week, they finish drives. What was it? Six touchdowns on their first 6 drives of the week. And they set a franchise record by starting the season with points on 9 consecutive possessions in that 47-10 rout of Carolina. But after week 1, we're like, yeah, but Carolina sucks. The story was Bryce Young. Carolina's not any better. No one was talking about New Orleans. And now it's Dallas. And I get it. Dallas didn't get better. They just paid their star players more money right before the season started.
Yeah, but doing that to Cleveland's defense in week 1, which I think we all would agree, Cleveland's defense is going to be one of the better defensive units if they're healthy. And we saw that proof of that against Jacksonville. It's why I pointed it out, going like, I think that was just nice for them to feel right, because there's nothing worse than when you have all this defensive talent, but you feel like you have no shot on offense. And now statistically, people will point to the defense for going like, oh, what happened to that unit? And you're like, they gave up, they didn't quit as competitors, but they were just like, this is fucking pointless because we can't do anything on this side of the football. So I think Dallas putting it on that unit, I don't think Dallas is going to be bad all of a sudden. And as New Orleans is running away early, I'm thinking, well, they have CD. I know Ferguson is out the tight end, but still, it's the NFL. You're going to have to figure out a way to move the football without some of your guys. It's going to happen to every single team. But then it just kept getting worse. And it's Kamara, back on the scene going, like, hey, we've got this dude who, when he first showed up, you're thinking, is this one of the most dynamic offensive weapons in the NFL? Age can always be part of that, but I don't feel like they've used him so much. It still feels like there's a lot of tread there.
Maybe and he wasn't used that much in college either.
Yeah, right. And maybe, because they were stacked at Tennessee. They were stacked at running back. Right. 4 awesome guys that you had to hand the ball off to, but maybe this is going to happen again. And Carr feels like I've already done this too much, but I look at Mark Stoops, and Mark Stoops will have, hey, what's going on with this guy? And then he has a nice season in Lexington. It's let's re-sign him. All right. And by all accounts, he's a really good coach. All right. But there's never really anything that great with Kentucky football in a stacked conference. But it's enough at the right time.
But it's the most winning that Kentucky's program's ever done. And so it's it's nice. So we're winning 9 every year.
But Auburn can be the weirdest team ever because Auburn will bring in the new coach, want him fired, and then they beat Bama, and then he gets all this money, and then they want him fired again, and then maybe they fire him, and then bring in somebody else. And then last year, where they lose to New Mexico, although I love their quarterback this year, Dampier. But when you look at Auburn's season, it's we're going to be super disappointing and have some bad losses or lose to Cal in 24 on top of everything else. But we're going to almost beat Georgia and then almost beat Alabama.
Right.
Okay. But the rest of it's going to be super, super annoying. So Derek
bring
Carr,
the Titanic back now. Bring it back.
Right. No, this is the lead up. Is that Derek Carr is a bit like that. Whatever that is, where just when you think you're over them. I thought the Saints were going to be really good last year just based on the opposing quarterbacks that they were going to face. It was a dreadful roster of quarterbacks they were going to go up against. Didn't happen. But coming in this year, maybe Derek Carr's due for one of those seasons because he's had some of these in the past.
Yeah, I've never been a Derek Carr guy. He got me in a lot of trouble when he was coming out in the draft. He played really well early on. Everyone said, "I told you so." We had an awkward meet and greet at Bristol when he came to campus.
Receipts. He wanted to fight Kellerman.
Yeah. He keeps receipts, and that's good.
Why I like him. He was a huge fan of SVP and Russillo, so I just started, and I didn't want to fight him.
And you're a sellout. But
feels a little harsh.
And I played the long game with Derek Carr, and so far so good. But I'm watching him now, and I'm like, okay, new system. System's good. Like this system. Fits him. Kamara seems like he's really comfortable in the system. Makes sense. It's a running back friendly system, and the play action, get the running backs involved in the passing game. Chris Olave, 37% of targets through the first 2 games, making big plays, contested catches, great route runner. I don't know. There's a lot to be intrigued by, and honest to God, there's always coming in the season, there's 10 teams, whatever the number is, 7, 10 teams where they got a legitimate chance. Then there's 6, 7 teams you're they got no chance. And then there's a bunch of teams in the middle, whatever that number is, 15 or so, 20, 17 teams where they're you can break them up into maybe they got a chance to be good and show improvement and they're promising, or they're just going to be a middling team. They're going to win 6 to 8, 9 games, somewhere in that range. We know it's going to happen. And for whatever reason, whether it's playing in the dome, maybe it's their ugly uniforms, in my opinion, they're just dreadfully boring to watch. You tell me Saints, Panthers inside the dome is on Sunday, I'm out.
You don't like their uniforms?
I don't.
What? Come on. That's just being
and the dome, and I feel like their dome's dark on TV.
Yeah, but it's awesome in there. Here's the thing: I don't really like going to NFL games as much as college. No, everybody knows that. But
it's awesome in there.
When I've done the LSU Saints doubleheader,
it's the best,
right?
And you're peeling yourself off the hotel bed. You got to drive 90 minutes down the road. What highway is it? Straight shot into New Orleans. you get to the game, you're licking your wounds, but you're there, and then the crowd's going, you're excited, and like you wake up. I love doing that. That you get Baton Rouge, New Orleans weekend. Like any football fan out there, please do it. I beg of you. But I'm saying watching a 1 p.m. game of the Saints over the last 5-7 years, not the most pleasurable thing. So all I'm saying is one of my biggest takeaways is Saint, like, wait, are they good? They might be good. So keep an eye on that. 2 other 2-0 teams that impressed me. Minnesota. They just beat San Francisco.
Yeah, I saw it.
My boy's dealing at quarterback. Admit it.
Okay, let me ask you this question because I asked it at the beginning. It's not about prospects. It's not about ceiling. But you're a GM. You need a quarterback. You can have Sam Darnold or Anthony Richardson from this day forth. Yeah, just blow your mind.
Sam Darnold.
Look out.
I think I'm taking Sam Darnold. But I've got to. But he's got to be he's got to be in this system.
How unfair is that? How unfair is that to Richardson?
Very, very unfair.
It is.
I just worry about it. And another note of Anthony Richardson, like, gosh, he's so talented. I mean, there's nothing I can say right now that's not obvious. So, but there's 13 starts in college does not translate very well in the NFL. And we still like that first interception he threw, lazy footwork. This is his 19th career start he just made this past week. Lose to Green Bay without
pros, right?
College and pro combined.
Yeah.
And so you see it.
Yeah, the physical stuff.
Know.
Like it's like watching Lagway from Florida split reps.
I'm certain this is going to be clipped off. I'm certain I'm going to be wrong about this. Anthony Richardson is going to it's going to take 1 full year of starting and then coming back the next year for him to start to show consistency and all that. And how do you bet against all that talent? But I'm telling you, I know I'm seeing Sam Darnold. He never had the ceiling by any stretch of the imagination of Anthony Richardson. But he's been through the grind. He's failed in terrible places. He knows what it's like. He's on this redemption tour now. He's been coached well now the past, 2-3 years. He's been, finally been coached well. He's familiar with this system. I love what he's playing with. He's not the rich guy, everything comes easy anymore. He's not that first round pick where he's plugged in and expect. Now he's the guy that everyone's counting out. And I like Sam Darnold in that situation better than, playing and trying to carry an organization that just couldn't be carried in 2 different places, in New York and Carolina.
Last thing on the NFL.
Fascinating.
Whatever you want to do.
Young quarterbacks struggling. Anthony Richardson was one of them.
Young quarterback guy this year. What about Caleb last night?
So I'll give you a positive and a negative. And it was interesting when in the broadcast they were talking about at one point they were talking about how encouraged they were by the offense and how he was handling the offense. And it was just the play before that jumped out, like how quickly he was getting everyone lined up, identifying things, setting his protection, had the running back was on the right side, moving over to the left. Like, I think mentally he's far more advanced than people think. Physically, from in the pocket, being that drilled in reps, that's just not where he is. Here's the question I posed to myself when I was watching it last night. Is this Caleb Williams? Think about this for a second. Is this what Mahomes would have looked like if Alex Smith wasn't in Kansas City that year and they threw him in there?
Well, it's advantage Andy Reid, right, over Eberflus. So that can't be debated. It's an awesome question. I totally get what you're saying. I'm supposed to say yes.
Because if you ask Mahomes, and I've told you this story before, when I talked to him, I did the preseason game for the Chiefs. When I talked to him, I didn't identify the mic, but he expanded upon it. Just like I needed last year desperately. Thank God I got last year. Thank God that Alex Smith was here. Thank God I had time to learn and sit back. And so I just wonder, and is this going to ruin him, or is it going to make him stronger? Is he going to advance fast? Who knows what the progression is going to be? But it's so easy to look out there and say, "Oh gosh, he missed that screen pass." You know, like after they were praising him for how quickly he's taking everything on, and his footwork's not where it needs to be. He's so used to running around playing that style of football. He's trying to be a system quarterback and work within the pocket, which he's going to have to do to succeed. And Mahomes has transitioned to that and got better and better at that each and every year. I'm just wondering, okay, like pump the brakes. Everyone's so concerned. And the Belichick clip that I told you about 2 weeks ago or last week is going to keep re-airing. Like he's just not accurate. He's not very accurate. I don't know why everyone's so excited. Yeah, he's not right now. But when he gets more reps.
You drafted Mac Jones.
When he gets, I wasn't going to go there. When he gets more reps and he starts to, gets through his first year and has an off season to look and study his footwork and all, like, I don't think the highs can't get too high. The lows can't get too low with Caleb this year. The bottom line is he could have sat out a year and watched behind a really good veteran and maybe that would have helped him, but he's going to learn on the job now. And there's going to be some moments like this.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. It's the Mahomes thing is really good, but I think if you're going to be really good, you can get beat up for a year and still be really good. And Mahomes didn't have to get beat up. Yeah.
The things that are scarier to me are Bo Nix, 0 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. I saw this stat today. 11 of 36 for 212 yards and 4 interceptions on passes more than 5 yards down the field. 30.6% completion rate on those passes, past 5 yards. It's the lowest in the league by 6%. And it's the worst in weeks 1 and 2 in the NFL in the last 10 years.
Yeah, I hope he's not on a pitch count. I mean, he's got it up almost 80 times now.
And Will Levis in Tennessee, critical errors, scary. And Bryce Young. So we got, there's Anthony Richardson, ups and downs, ton of talent. Will Levis is scary. Bo Nix is scary. Bryce Young those are scary situations right now.
All right.
To leave on a positive note.
Yeah, that'd be good. Halloween themed. We'll come back and be like, who's spooking you out the most? Heading in. Kyler Murray, a 98.3 QBR in week 2.
I didn't even get to Kyler.
That's all right. We'll do it with Domonique. Bryce Young. Bryce Young.
Don't worry about it. We'll do it with somebody who's better at this than you.
No, we'd never say that to you.
Tell Domonique I said to please get to it.
All right. Good stuff. That's all we need.
And 4 showed up, by the way, in Arizona. I told you.
Sure did.
Might want to get him involved. Marvin Harrison Jr. Come on. That was beautiful. Arizona's sneaky good. Arizona, I was impressed, had the best loss of any team in the league in week 1.
I like that.
Against
college
Buffalo.
football resumes.
Exactly. Let's build them.
We're trying to figure out the seeding. Be like, hey, it's a good loss. It's a good loss up there.
It's a good loss.
Thank you, Todd.
You got it, brother.
We have some big news from our guest that we'll get to a little bit later because he's not just a podcaster, the host of the Domonique Foxworth show, out 3 days a week, but he's also a writer. The Aaron Hernandez story on FX Hulu is going to be out this upcoming week. I was able to get a couple episodes down ahead of time and some cool backstory to that as well. So congrats on that, Domonique. And let's start with some NFL, though. All right. Okay, I talked about this too high safety rate thing that we saw an explosion in week 1 from where it's been in previous years. I'll admit, Sunday on the couch, watching the TV angle, you're thinking, like, is there just nothing there for so many of these quarterbacks? Like, what is this actually? Am I having fun? is this fun to watch? Is there a running emphasis zag coming? So somebody who played the position, what are you seeing?
Yeah, I mean, it is fun to watch, but not from the TV angle. And so, I think you can see defenses have evolved personnel-wise. Like, the bodies on defense are different. And I think this happens in football often where there's some rule changes or some offensive evolution, and it takes some time for the play style and the body types and the defense to catch up. And then eventually the offense generates some sort of evolution that we need to react to. Like, that's a healthy ecosystem in football. And like the fun stuff that I've been catching on with is like the simulated pressures. And one of the reasons why it's been hard for guys to have success is they'll send what looks like a blitz, but they actually end up having enough guys in coverage to play a traditional zone coverage. But the quarterback is reacting as if it's a blitz because he's read it as a blitz. And sometimes they'll slide the line the wrong way. So you get actually the impact of a blitz with a free runner because the line slid the wrong way with the coverage in the back end still being high end. And what you end up as a result, you get a quarterback patting the ball, rolling to the right and throwing an incomplete pass. But if you get the full picture, you watch the way the coverage rolls. And so oftentimes, and Tom Brady talks about how the quarterbacks don't have a command at the line of scrimmage the way that they used to, but the defenses are different now. So if you're a quarterback, they'll always teach you, look at the safeties first. They'll tell you. So what that means is, like, if there's a nickel blitz coming, eventually one of the safeties is going to be over top of the nickel. And so the quarterback's like, all right. And so when you see like nickels like showing the blitz and faking the blitz, while you'll see like Cam Newton or some quarterback say, you ain't coming, because he can't come because there's nobody over there to replace him. So one thing that I saw Spags do that was really impressive is they did the blitz with no one over top, but then they just rolled the entire coverage. And so it's impossible to get a true pre-snap read, and then it's incumbent on the quarterback to react. So doing that and then doubling Jamar Chase in certain situations, and then you're going to get a quarterback back there a little antsy and uncomfortable. And imagine doing that to someone who's not Joe Burrow. And we end up with a lot of situations where the product on TV is a little stagnant, but what's happening on the back end is freaky.
Yeah, we're just not seeing it because I've had a lot of, look, it's still the NFL and we all love it. But in the first 2 weeks, I've trained myself to get better and better about just not watching the ball. I mean, you just shouldn't watch it because if it's worth watching, you're going to get the replay anyway, and then you can watch the ball. But I don't think I've ever been better with defensive lines and tackles and that kind of stuff and pulling offensive linemen. And I'm just awful at the rest of it now because it's not on the screen. Yeah. It's all to your left or right, but it's past the border of the size of your television.
I put up the next gen on my laptop, which it does make it a little bit less fun where I'm looking at the dots, I'm rewinding and looking at the dots. It's like, it's not a great communal experience, but then I'm like, oh, that was actually really cool, even though it looked kind of boring and dumb.
Yeah. All right. So you said something on Burrow, like the safety blitz on the third down, that was just huge. There are quarterbacks, especially the younger ones, that might be the hardest thing for all the things they have to do to figure out how to make it in this league. You have to have a sense of like where the pressure's coming, or you at least have to go, all right, on this play, internal clock, like I've got to get it out of certain. Against Spags, like you probably should know. Yeah, you should probably know. But they did a really good job. I thought Romo was actually really good talking about like, look, if you're getting chased on one side, even with the McDuffie stats, do you just have another receiver follow behind what's likely a double team because you're not going to leave Chase one-on-one in that kind of situation. You're likely getting man. So, just have somebody underneath it. But maybe that was just the genius of timing it at the right time and bringing it from an angle and bringing it from somebody that doesn't see it. Did you have an issue with Burrow not being better prepared on that play?
No, because they switched plays up, and Spags is good about that, where he'll save something. And I'm not sure if this was true in this situation, but he's always been someone who saved something for the second half. So, like, maybe Burrow should anticipate that there's something saved for the second half. But like, if they show you the same look all game on every third down or every other third down, then you get to a key third down, I'm going to anticipate that they're going to bring the one defense that they really love, not the one that they really love that they've just been saving for this spot.
Yeah. Okay. So you also said something interesting before we got on here. Are you not like I left that game going, I feel good about both teams, despite the flaws, specifically the Chiefs at left tackle. But do you like another team in the AFC better than those two teams?
You see, that's the tough part.
It sounds like you don't like them, but you don't have another option.
I think I'm getting better about shaking off my preseason expectations. And I picked the Bills to win their division, but I didn't think the Bills were a legitimate Super Bowl contender. But I'm starting to feel differently about that. And I picked the Bills because what they did at the end of last year. And I thought Sean McDermott is incredibly impressive in the way that they just manufactured defense without the guys that we expected. And if Von Miller is going to continue to produce the way that he produced, and they can still manufacture this coverage without Milano and without Poyer, with young corners, like that, to me, is incredibly impressive. And we don't have to discuss the other side of the ball. Josh Allen is a one-man offense. And so if the question for me for them was, are they going to be able to generate some sort of production from the receiver spot, which it seems like Coleman and Shakir are going to be good enough and getting better. But the big question was, how good is their defense going to be with some new pieces? And it seems like that's been pretty good and they're only going to get better. So I'm not sure, though. That's the thing. It's like, coming out of that Chiefs-Bengals game, I wanted to feel like someone had this thing completely under control. But the Chiefs' offense is not what we expect, and their defense is still kind of shaping up and trying to figure out how to replace Jerry Sneed.
Yeah, right. I mean, losing somebody like Sneed, but they've done such a good job on that side of the football. They've drafted so well. And, after week one, my whole thought, look, it wasn't like I was the only one saying it. It was like, if you didn't get the Chiefs last year, you're doing it wrong. Even though Mahomes,
right,
like it was the worst he's ever played last year. And if you actually want to like bake the stats together for 2 weeks, you're like, they're not that great. The first pick was bad. The second pick was an incredible play. Where are you on defensive backs being a little early in that gray area where you're allowed to get away with it, but that felt a little too early to get away with it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm biased. I like this.
So no flag?
The difference to me in that situation is he didn't come there. He didn't attack the player. He's attacking the ball, and he got there a little early. It's kind of like one of those spirit of the play. Like, he made the play. He was going to make the play. And I get that he physically got there early, but his eyes are in the backfield. And that Cam Taylor-Britt talking shit before the game and then getting that one-hand interception, that was incredible. I love that. I got so excited at home alone watching that incredible play. I loved it. But yeah, I mean, the Chiefs, Sumatia, the tackle, sorry I'm all over the place, but I just finished watching that game too, and all this stuff is in my head. Like, the tackle situation is a problem for them. The cornerback situation may shape up. And the reason why everyone said last year was the year to get them was because we thought that they addressed their weapons issue. And I'm not sure they have. Xavier Worthy had a blown coverage for a touchdown and a jet sweep for a touchdown. It wasn't like he showed that he was a great player. Hollywood Brown is not healthy. And Rice is good. So, like, I'm not saying that they're done, but they haven't proven to me that they've answered those questions yet.
I'm glad you said that about Xavier Worthy, because as somebody that spends a lot of time on Saturdays watching all these guys, and then it's just the disconnect. I mean, there's some people that only watch one. I think there's very few that put the time in to watch both all the time. And NFL fans are watching the season opener going, I can't believe they got there. Well, like, you want to know what? Like, there's a bunch of other guys that were way better than him that all got drafted ahead of him. Okay. So I know he was really fast. I know what the combine numbers were. I remember John Ross also lit it up too, speaking of Cincinnati. So Worthy was a nice receiver at Texas, but I never watched him thinking he was even close to being in the same class as those other guys. Now you want to talk about Mahomes, the creativity and the Andy Reid offense, and there's going to be all these other guys who's going to get these different looks. I would be really surprised if he turns into somebody that's like, 100 catches, 8 touchdowns every single year, the way people felt like they just were landing Justin Jefferson, and it's just not really who he was on Saturdays.
One thing
I'm glad you said it.
Yeah, and one thing that's true, that's been true about this Mahomes offense is every time they get anybody, we're like, watch what they do there. And no one's really done it. Like, we said that about
Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Like, I was like, he was really, but it was a million NFL guys around him on that 19 team.
Right.
And he was good, with cuts inside of the tackles and that kind of stuff. But then all of a sudden, maybe fantasy messes it up, because then I remember just everybody being like, oh my God, like, you got to take him. And
it's not just him. It's like Kadarius Toney. People were like, oh, it's like another Tyreek Hill. Sammy Watkins. People were all excited about it. And like, everyone's like, because Mahomes is so good, we assume that people are going to fit in the offense. and be the best version of themselves in that offense. And it hasn't been true yet. So assuming just because Xavier Worthy is incredibly fast, and he's a good receiver too, like he runs good routes.
He's good, but it's just he's not any of those guys that were drafted at the top of the first round.
Exactly.
Like, at least that's just not what I saw when I watched all those guys play. Okay, Kyler. All right, full Kyler timeline. No idea as the number one pick. And then had stretches early in his career where I thought every week he was the only reason they had a chance to win games. Then totally off him, whether it was vibes, gossip, the fact that I think he's going to get hurt every time he's tackled. And then I was like, man, that's a massive contract with a lot of guaranteed money the rest of the way. Okay, so I was off of him again, but hope for his talent. Like, there's some guys that I watch, I go, I don't see it ever. Kyler, I've already seen it when it looked good. And, he's great in the beginning of the Bills game. Then it got a little tougher for him. But yesterday was a reassessment of who he could be, at least, because it was filthy.
He was the best quarterback in football yesterday. And I don't even think it was even close. And I guess his biggest comp is like Derek Carr. But he was amazing. And he did it from the pocket. He did it with his athleticism. He did it with creativity. His accuracy was on point. And Kyler has it all. It's funny because it felt like one of the things that we as a football analysis community have flip-flopped on was like, short quarterbacks are okay. Short quarterbacks don't work at all. You can't, and we just
I'm back on that. Yeah.
We just have these flip-flops all the time. But Kyler Murray is showing that maybe we should not categorize them as all the same thing. If you're a ridiculous talent like Kyler Murray, then maybe. If you're not a ridiculous talent like, hey, somebody else, then you probably need to stick with this 6'5", 230-pound guy who can launch that thing.
Yeah, I was watching Tim Couch be inducted in the Kentucky Hall of Fame at halftime of the Georgia game. My God, is that dude a beast? Just put together. I mean, standing there. Because you always worry about, the 25-year later guy reunion. You're like, we're the same age? Like, what happened to you?
Tim focuses energy on getting ripped.
Dude, he was enormous. But again, back to the original thought. Another small quarterback, Tua. I said Friday after he was knocked out of the Thursday game, I get it. It's kind of nice that we can be concerning. Sometimes I wonder if people are being nice because the approval rating of being nice is better than the approval rating of not being nice. But I just don't love when everybody starts telling somebody else that they should retire. Where is the story for you? Somebody with the Players Association where you had a different experience with this, beyond just playing.
Right.
You're shaking your head a little bit, so take it wherever you want.
No, I mean the Players Association perspective is interesting because there's the responsibility to protect the players, but also the responsibility or the drive to give them what they want. And so I think fundamentally I agree with you in that we shouldn't really be calling for Tua to retire or anything like that. And it doesn't matter what we say. He's going to make the decision at some point. But the big question for me is who's going to call him? Because I would assume that he's going to start getting some calls from the league office too at some point. Because the worst possible outcome is for something dramatic to happen on the field again. And we've had enough dramatic things on the field. But he's going to make his decision with the information that he gets. I don't care so much. Honestly, I felt I texted a couple of people in media because I was getting tired of all the I don't know. I'm certainly guilty of grandstanding from time to time, so I don't want to be super judgmental. But it felt like a lot of grandstanding around this particular event, and I was getting sick of it. Like, man, it stinks, and we all care, and we want them to be healthy, but we have to be honest with ourselves. We love this game too much because we have plenty of evidence of how dangerous it is for people.
Okay, perfect segue here. Again, for those that don't know, we'll remind you, Domonique is a screenwriter. It's official now. Because until it's official, it's just a really time-consuming hobby. And FX, the premiere of the Aaron Hernandez series, that is tomorrow, right, on FX. What time is that?
I don't know. I mean, don't we watch everything on demand? It's Hulu.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, whatever. Okay, so let's go through the history here. For those that don't know, I actually interviewed to be in the writer's room here, and it was funny because I found out that I didn't get it and that Foxworth did get it. I might have found out before you did.
Yeah.
And then I told you. Did I tell you or did I wait so somebody else told you? Because I don't think that was really my place.
Yeah. Somebody else told me that I got it, and then after that told me that you wrote for it. And then I was like, let me call my guy. And I don't know. I think, I thought you had to be pissy about it, and you were like the most, I don't know. I should have known better. You're a good dude.
Yeah, I could have been faking it too, though. It could have been like,
that's not you.
Right. No, I wasn't. I was. That's right. I'm glad that we've worked this out because it wasn't my place to tell you that you got the staff job and in front of the people that were making that decision. So I'm glad that I actually, as I'm remembering it now, because then when you hit me up and said I got it, but I was afraid to tell you because I thought you were going to be pissed at me. I was like, I actually already knew, and I couldn't be happier. And look, the reality of it is, if you have one writer who wrote some spec stuff, who also is in competition with another writer who wrote some spec stuff and played in the NFL, you should get that job 10 out of 10 times. And I know how hard you've been working at it. So I'm not doing this so people just, before this pod be like, I didn't really like you. But now with that Foxworth thing that you were so gracious, that's not what I'm trying to do here. I just really was that pumped for you because I know how hard it is. And it's a perfect spot for you. So I'm really proud of you.
I know you were genuinely pumped, and I appreciate your reaction. And I think that I might have just told on myself by the assumption that you'd have been pissed, because maybe I'd like to say that I'd be gracious too, but I might have had a little hater spirit in me. I would have performed it though. I'm a better actor than you. I would have like, oh, I'm so proud of you. Then I'd have went and laid down with my wife.
Yeah, but I think you should have been like, fucking guys lifting to compensate for never being an athlete his whole life. Tell us another pickup hoop story, Russillo.
I like your pickup hoop stories.
Yeah, I don't know. They're not so good anymore. Okay, but what was the process like? Take this. Like, what did you learn about it once? Because that's the thing that I try to tell everybody being out here is like, I knew I was naive about the business before I got into it, so that was a bit of a like, hey, giving myself a grace period here of navigating this, but now 5-6 years of navigating it, I'm like, oh, this is like the writing. The writing's the easy part if you like it.
Yeah.
But what have you learned in the process from going through this?
So my process was kind of unique. So they put me on, to be completely honest, they probably wouldn't have done this to you, but they put me on as a consulting producer, which was kind of like a throwaway job. And I think that the showrunner wanted to save room just in case he needed to hire a real writer in case I didn't work out. And Stu Zickerman. And
Stu's great.
Yeah,
and I'm not saying he was great to me through the process and everything, and it was awesome. When I read the pilot, I was like, okay, they've got it. I'm so nasty about sports shows. I just am. And with this one, after I read the pilot, I was like, okay, this has a chance to be pretty cool. But go ahead.
And after a couple weeks, he promoted me to actual staff writer. But the process that you're talking about, so it's such a long process before you even get to start writing into like talking about themes and ideas and events and beat sheets for each character and then combining them all before you actually get to write the script. And you write the scripts and you bring them back and rewrite them and then share them. And then eventually we submit them all. And then Stu goes through all the scripts and changes them. And that's just the writing process before you get to like casting and locations. And then the directors get involved and the actors have to perform it. And they're still making alterations to the script on set as it's going out. So like you feel like when you're in that room, and this was my first experience, like, oh, we are making this. And then you don't realize how many other people touch it. And so like I'm going to get credit for writing one episode, but like some of the concepts in the other, I feel more responsible for concepts in other episodes than I do for some of the concepts in my episode. And then when it actually goes to screen, you have to experience it through the way that the actors and the directors interpret it. So it's just it's so cool to be a part of this collaborative process, but it's also anytime anyone's done anything in a collaborative fashion, you're like, God, I wish they understood this, or I wish they did that. But also when they like see something that you didn't see and make it better, oh, it's the best part because you can be like, oh yeah, that was me the whole time. It's my idea.
So you are assigned an episode, but see, your deal is a little different though because of the playing experience that you were going to be involved in. Like you could have been a non-writer and then still been a valuable asset to the show. Because I think there's just so many shows you're like, well, that wouldn't happen. Like I'll admit, even like seeing the Drew Bledsoe poster in Aaron Hernandez bedroom, I go, I don't know if Aaron Hernandez would have a Drew Bledsoe poster.
Yeah, so
7 years later, but that's the way my brain works on any of the sports stuff.
Hold
the writing part of it, though. Go ahead.
So please, while you are going through this, there are going to be things like that, but understand how many other things were avoided. And so the target audience of the show is broader than us sports nuts because I'm watching the show too, and it's like these things like they feel like a little itch when there's things that pop up, and it's like, oh, but come on.
Yeah, but you and I are like the less than 1%.
Right.
Like when I see somebody lifting in jail and they're repping out 85, I go, there should be somebody on site. Like if this is the badass gang in a jail. They don't have 225s on the bar. So I actually think the football stuff, the way it's shot, look, for the Hernandez part, you know how tough it is to find somebody to be cast is, hey, you have to be this person that has this smile, that con man smile. When anybody who ever in their life has that buddy that is always fucking up and is completely full of shit, but can show up and be in the kitchen of your parents and have just that $1 million smile. I think that part of the casting for the main character for Aaron Hernandez is terrific. And the football parts of it are fine. And I think it's shot really well where you're not staying with plays too long, where it's just so hard to find, and be jacked and be an insane athlete at the tight end position and be an awesome actor. Because really it's the off the field stuff with Hernandez that has to be more convincing. Right. So I think that you guys nailed it with that. But I felt like I got away from it. The actual assignment of an episode and then what you're responsible for and then how that changes. Because I think that's the real eye-opening experience when you realize like, okay, cool, I wrote this episode, but now the showrunner who's mapped out all of the episodes is going to then say, hey, great work, but now I have to change all this stuff so all the pieces fit together. What was that like?
Yeah, so that was it was tough, man. So first we create like, once we determine all the characters that we want, we create a beat sheet for all of their specific arcs, the things that should happen in their life to give them the ups and downs. And you do it for the whole season. Then you do it for individual episodes. And then you have to blend them into one episode. So particular beats fall off and certain events that you had, they fall off. So we do this all together. The entire writer's room is doing this for months or at least for weeks. And then once we do that, then we turn those into like scenes. And then someone's assigned to go write it. And so we all have kind of created this. Then you go write it, you bring it back, and we're like, all right, this doesn't work, this doesn't work, this doesn't work. Then you go, you send them off to go.
Can you give me an example? Can you give me an example of something you thought would work, and then once you talked through it, you went, you know what? Well, this is out, which is the worst feeling when you think you have the answer, you think you have the idea, and you go, actually, I've spent all this time developing this part of it, and it doesn't even make any sense.
Yeah, I think there was some, I don't want to do any spoiler stuff, but there was a trip there. So we wanted to achieve a certain relationship, development of relationship, and it involved like a road trip essentially, and put a whole bunch of time into writing it and thinking about it and how it's going to work out. And then we did it and was like, hey, that was a waste of time and it didn't work. You just have to cut it all the way out. And one of the interesting things, this popped up in my head that goes back to the previous conversation we were having, is my desire to make all the football stuff feel real. And it kind of backfired on me at one point because I stood on a table and fought for a bunch of stuff, and I got most of the things that I fought for, but there was one thing that I fought for and I got that I feel like backfired, was I wanted to make sure that when we started with Aaron Hernandez in the NFL, he had 85 because Randy Moss was 81 when he got there. And so when the trailer came out, people were like tweeting at me, Like, what? It's 85? And I'm like, no, this is exactly what I was telling. I was telling Stu, don't put him out there in 81 the whole time. People will hate that. But most of the time, in actuality, people don't remember and they don't care about those little details. But I was like, you know what I'm not going to do is have you out there with my guy in the wrong jersey number. But it was fun.
I thought the line in the pilot with the father's incredible in the pilot. And he starts talking to Aaron because the backstory, I think a lot of people know this, is the older brother is the quarterback at UConn, and the father wanted Aaron to play at UConn. He wanted him to stay close. He was protective would be a nice way of describing the relationship because it was beyond that. But he's like, you're going to play on Sunday. And he goes, the NFL took Sundays from the church. That's how powerful this is. And it was a great line. It was one of those lines where you're just hoping as a writer to have something that works and it's efficient and it's just in one sentence and it kind of sums up something. And it also is a good line because it helps maybe the non-sports crazed person understand the importance, of the goal. I mean, it's very simple to say, oh, it's a big deal to play in the NFL, but the way that's presented very early on, you immediately kind of know how every piece fits together within the family dynamic within 15 minutes of the show. That works out really well. Were you good in the room? Were you good? Or wait a minute. It sounds like you had a follow up on that. So go that way and I'll ask you whatever.
That line and all the other lines that were great, I wrote them. All of them.
You didn't write that line.
Well, you don't think so?
I don't think you did.
To be honest with you, I don't remember who wrote what, but it sounds like something I would write. I think I wrote that.
It may have. I just would be surprised if you had the line at a pilot. Is all. But I think the pilot that I read is so long ago.
Yeah.
And like, I know that it had to have been, look, that's what it is. Yeah. Stuff gets changed over and over and over again. Were you good in a room or did people just defer to you because of your intense NFL personality?
Nah, to be honest with you, I think and you and I have had these conversations before. I think there's different expectations. I think I surprised them with like my ability to like do non-football stuff. It's like to understand themes and understand. So like, obviously I wasn't the best writer in the room, but like in the conversations, writing, see, that's the thing. It's like at least for me in my one writer's room experience, it was so much less about the act of writing, so much more about the conversations we were having together.
Yeah.
And figuring out where we wanted to go with the plot. So you then go off and write, but like we had paint by numbers. Like all of us, once you went off to write, you pretty much had paint by numbers done for you. We just had to do the legwork of actually writing it. But the creative part of it was like incredibly collaborative.
Have you watched the Sopranos doc yet with David Chase?
I haven't. I've heard that it's great. And like the casting part, people have said it's the best part where you see like these other people doing these attempts at casting. I'll get to it.
It's great. I knew enough about Chase because I'd read Difficult Men, which I think is now 10 years old. Brett Martin wrote one of my favorite books ever and really inspired me because he basically went through all the great television shows, all the prestige TV, and then just gave you the history of how they all worked and how they worked in the room and what the showrunners were like. I mean, it's incredible. That book should be the basis of a course in college, if you're interested in that thing. But Chase was just a haunted man, and he's very open about it. And so they don't get as deep into that in the doc as they do in the book. But knowing what I'd read in the book about David Chase and then seeing him in the documentary, like it completely worked out. And my favorite parts were just him talking about mapping it all out and trying to figure out, like he would tell the writer's room, like, okay, what are your first 5 ideas? All right, great. Now erase them all. And because all of those things have been done before and we have to figure out a way to do something else. And then the first season crushes. And I also think it's one of those things that drives me crazy about, well, I shouldn't say society because that's too broad of a term because there's other issues than whether or not TV or movies are good. But as far as the assumptions made by people making the decisions that prior to Sopranos, maybe Oz, The Shield, kind of in that same era of like, well, we can't actually do this because that's not what people want. And then once they get something a little bit different, the reward is, oh, wait, people actually are smarter. The audience is a little bit smarter. They are a little more malleable. They're willing to take a chance because you're rooting for an awful person in Tony Soprano. So Chase was just, once the first season is great, he is so determined to make it even better, moving the goalposts on himself, which is really kind of what you have to do to remain that successful. And somebody that had decades in the business, never feeling fulfilled, and then ultimately, arguably writing the greatest show in the history of television. So that part of it, for somebody who's worked in it, for you, I think that'll make you really enjoy. I think the casting thing works for everybody because it's kind of cool and funny to see who could have been Christopher and who could have been Tony and all these different things. But Chase talking about the mechanisms, and then like a couple writers that were like, I got fired. Another guy was like, I couldn't deal with Chase anymore. And then you think like, is that what you have to do? You have to be, apparently Vince Gilligan's the best showrunner ever just because of his personality and everybody loved working with him on Breaking Bad. But when you see Chase just being tormented by his own standards,
I'll definitely watch that. I'll probably take a look at it in New York, but the sports analogies are always there, but there are different ways to do different things. But it feels like the obsessive, Jordan-esque, locked in, nothing else matters. Like you're going to pay for it emotionally, but everyone else is going to get the rewards of you being willing to destroy yourself and carry this burden and keep moving the goalposts on yourself. So I don't know if you know this or not, but I'm not like that. So sorry, David Chase. I'm not going to write the best show in TV history. I'm sorry. It's not going to be me.
You're not going to do that. Hey, did you get to go to any of the filmings?
Oh, yeah. I went to probably 4 or 5 of them. It was awesome.
Was there ever a chance for you to play defensive back?
No, there was no chance.
Why not?
I didn't go to any
You
of
should have
those.
pushed for that.
So
you should have pushed that and be like, what'd be really funny? It's having a staff writer. I mean, look, you think an extra is going to get into a better stance than me?
I couldn't. Yeah, those extras. Hey, nobody could get any reps in the league. But I couldn't get Mina or Pablo in the show. Those are the people that I tried to get into the show. I was like, just go ahead and let them be like classmates in Florida or professors or something. I couldn't get them in the show, so I didn't think that I could get myself in.
I think I could have done Adazio if you had pushed for it.
Oh, for sure.
Adazio's great.
Honestly, I think you'd have been better served as like random New England dude in the bar, like who just like bumps in. Like I would have, because that would have been more valuable as like people watching the show, and then you just like shoulder bump them as you're walking through in some club.
Yeah, accent.
Like, is that Russillo?
That would have been great. Like, catch the ball, fucking loser. See, yeah, you guys whiffed on that.
Yeah,
I've been waiting on that moment for years. Look, congrats to you.
Appreciate you, man.
And Stu's a great guy.
Mm-hmm.
I can't wait to watch the rest. I watched the first episodes last night. It was a lot of fun, man. So, like I said, I'm just really happy for you, and you deserve it.
I appreciate it. So when we're going to work together on this and do a show anytime. No, okay.
Hey, I'm not saying I'm gonna be sending you my resume here. But make sure you check out the Domonique Foxworth show. Yeah. 3 days a week. They just had Bill Barnwell on, wrapping up week 2. So check that out wherever podcasts are listened to. Thanks, man. Some technical stuff I want to update you on. But first of all, life advice, email address, lifeadvicerr@gmail.com. We've got so many feedback ones. Are we doing a Friday feedback for YouTube? Mail it in Thursdays? Is that what we're calling it?
Why don't we do you want to do a Friday feedback this week? Let's do, if we have a lot of them, let's just do it this week. We'll tape it like Wednesday after the show.
We've got a ton of them.
Let's just do it. Because we were going to do this other segment that we've been talking about called, the Mail It In Wednesday or Mail It In Thursdays, which is a different concept. That's more of like, we wanted
as opposed to Wednesday mailing it in.
Mail it in, then just insert day.
Because originally this pod was supposed to be 2 episodes a week, and then it just magically was 3 when it started. And then there was a suggestion that Wednesdays should just be like artsy and pointless.
A B-side.
It was, just make them weird Wednesdays. Maybe to make my life easier. looking back, I kind of wish I had, but
set the precedent by now.
Yeah, right. 30-minute Wednesdays. All right, let's have this guy on. So
Wednesday, what do you
Nero,
want?
tough hang. So but it's just not. There's no way that was actually going to happen because there's always something happening. There's always something happening. So what's the trade goes down, or there's a rumor, or the next NBA guy is pissed off. And we're like, okay, a lot of people don't know this about me. I started taking a painting class, and my teacher is joining us now for 20 minutes, and then we're going to, so. All right. Well, so, Ceruti, I bulldozed you there. What was the answer?
We haven't even really talked this out fully, but in my head, we were going to do, we have the YouTube page. We want to put more stuff that's YouTube exclusive on there. We want to give the people, some stuff other than just the pod. Right. And a Friday feedback once a month, I think was on the docket. We're going to do that. So let's do that this week. We could tape it Wednesday. It'll run Friday. But the other thing was the mail it in Thursday thing, where it was going to be just like random stories that we don't get to talk about on the pod that we want to talk about. Just dumb stuff. It could be a history conversation that you read a book. You want to talk about this. It could be, people arguing about whether The Bear is a comedy or not. Like, there's a lot of things that we just don't get to that I feel like the people would want to hear you and Kyle and maybe me talk about.
I do think The Bear is more of a drama than a comedy, but I do not like when people say The Sopranos is a comedy. Like, oh, you mean all the intense therapy laughter that I used to have when I would watch the sessions with Melfi? Like, yes, there's unintended comedy. Paulie is funny in his way, but it's like when people will try to say Die Hard's a Christmas movie. I'm like, why are you trying to make shit difficult?
You're trying so hard. Or that, the hot dog is a sandwich. Like, come on, what are we doing? We're doing the same stuff over and over again. That will not be a part of
no, season 1. It could be in the books. That's great. Season 1 of Wednesdays in the books.
Yeah,
that's the
is
episode.
It Mail It In Thursdays or Mail It In Wednesdays?
It's Mail It In Thursdays, but we're going to tape it on Wednesday because it'll air on Thursday.
What I like about the title is you can't even get mad if it's not a good episode.
Yeah,
like,
we
we'll
told
have
you.
Good ones. Yeah, right. So, okay. Having said all of that, let's get to an email. My elderly parents hate each other. Hi, I love your show. I'd appreciate some common sense input on a situation that feels like it'd use some common sense or at least insight from someone who isn't emotionally involved. You're right. I don't know them. 40 years old, ex-intramural rec league, church league contributor from East Tennessee. I got dunked on by Ron Mercer at an outdoor court in Clinton, Tennessee once. That's the closest I've reached to sports stardom. Hey, Mercer was a bucket. Kids don't remember. Kids don't remember content is with a bullet going to the top of. What's the goal of that?
Views.
Yeah.
Is it worth a tweet being like, kids don't remember? Like, I don't remember the origins of the issues with North Korea. I don't remember.
Nope.
I don't. Wasn't around.
Another topic for Mail It In Thursday.
He was actually really. Yeah, right. There you go. He was really cool. Maybe we do that. Maybe during the tournament, we come up with 64 content ideas that we despise.
The origins of the North Korean conflict.
No, I meant like the precursor to. Like I've said in the past, like if anybody starts their point with keep that same energy, for they'd be like, oh, this point will suck.
Yeah.
All right. So anyway, he was really cool about it. Said sorry afterwards. So after Ron Mercer dunked on this guy, he said sorry. That's actually nice. Worse. It hurt. Yes, it should. Just get dunked on. Talk to me. No gym stats. That'd be embarrassing. But my Lithuanian ancestry and its debt to the family Sabonis requires that I tell you that I distributed the points like Arvydas would have to each according to his needs. That's good. Good stuff. Anyway, in a strange situation, my sister, 6 years older, I began talking about a year ago to plan the 50th wedding anniversary for our parents. They'd previously planned the 50th wedding anniversary of my mother's parents, and accordingly, I believe they'd be interested in the same. Immediately upon my sister and I mentioning the matter, we inferred some reluctance. We knew things had turned a bit between my folks in the past 5 years or so. Specifically, my mother had mentioned that my pot's medication had made him a complete asshole. It's a quote. But we never really imagined that it would reach the point of separation. They seemed content to lose themselves with my niece after all, and the trips we'd recently begun that included all of us at various tourist escapes around the Southeast. I just mean they seemed completely happy around my sister and me during vacations. Look, the fact that they're miserable together doesn't necessarily mean maybe that was such a respite from their current situation to be around other people and on the move that it wasn't they were masking it. They were actually legitimately happy because it wasn't just, hey, I got to come home to this person who I can't stand right now, even though it's been 50 years. That would be tough, man. Like year 47 going, did I make a mistake? But I
see what else is out there.
Yeah.
Still got years left.
Your dad's like, what's up with the apps?
Tough conversation.
Yeah. I don't even like pretending it
But
happened.
it goes back to your thing. Would you rather be alone than annoyed?
It happened.
Yeah. No, I know. I mean, we all know my vote, but yeah, that's tough. Maybe now I'm becoming emotionally involved. I feel bad. That would suck. Like you think, okay, so if our guy is 40, 50-year anniversary, maybe, 70 to 80 range is what we're talking about here.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just say 75, throw a dart at it. Imagine it's 75. It's going like, I can't stand you. I imagine most people at that point would be like, I can't even fathom what it would be like to not be annoyed. Like, I'd rather be annoyed because this is what I know every day, as opposed to, okay, let's split up our stuff and I'm going to live separately to that. Does that mean you go on a bender at 75?
I think you're the new dude at the coolest retirement community you can afford, right? I mean, have you guys ever heard that? Like, not necessarily like retirement homes, but like a I'm watching Sopranos again, a retirement community. There's just a lot of people that are down a spouse, right? And eventually it's like, what do you got to lose? I think those places are more fun than we think they are.
Yeah, they have a ton of STDs there.
Right. That's all right.
Nursing
Cool.
homes.
You said
yeah.
it. Cool.
You have can you cite that?
No, I mean,
dudes are saying it. I don't know.
Thanks for keeping me in check, though. I don't have a site on that.
I guess you got. When did that come up? When did you first hear about this?
I don't know. Just like Kyle, you just heard that. That's a thing that we know. I feel like
it's just been said multiple
times.
It's just been known. It's known.
Yeah,
it's like you'd be surprised how much shit is going down. At Shady Grove or whatever. I think you would just be surprised. It's not what you think of when you think of the elder community, but days are long.
Yeah, this is from 2015. 3 reasons why STDs are on the rise in nursing homes.
What did you Google? I'm just
STD
wondering.
Nursing homes. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. Not a ton of information, but basically that hey, there's a growing number of nursing homes. Yeah, gonorrhea, chlamydia, all the bad ones are.
What happened after 15?
What was
going on before 15?
Maybe we got our shit together.
The apps. Think about it.
I don't think you need apps though at a nursing home.
Of course not. No, I'm just joking.
Wow.
I was looking for a blender. What is this? Grinder. All right. So, all right. So if we haven't cheered you up enough already, I think, and likely my sister, we have been ignoring the signs, and now we're left to try to repair any possible relationship they have. Personally, I've forgotten the 50th anniversary. I'm about to have a heart-to-heart with my pops about it, but I believe he's going to reiterate what my mother said, which is that neither of them want to celebrate this thing that's kind of rotten. Instead, and unfortunately, I feel like I'm about to talk to him and later her about what they really want the last years of their lives, and I'm afraid I might be put in a situation where I have to agree that they should split up to enjoy their last years. My question for you three is, how do you think I should handle it? If my pops wholeheartedly wants to repair things. Number two, how should I handle it if he mirrors my mother's feelings that are beyond repair? And three, what's the best way to prepare my 75-year-old parents to decide to start new lives apart from each other? Thanks for any advice. All right. Well, as far as like specific, I mean, it's hard to know without the dynamic of like what the relationship is like. I can tell you this, being the oldest of five, and having to have some tough conversations with my parents from time to time because I'm the oldest. There's always going to be a dynamic. It's a bit like the big brother, little brother thing, where it's the parent-child, where they don't want to listen to you until you prove yourself worthy of listening to. And I know that I feel like my parents listen to me now in a different way, perhaps with more trust than they did in the past. But, if I was calling them up to complain or critique certain moves in my 20s, they're like, you're an idiot. No thanks. So it was kind of up to me to have enough standing with them to get through to them or attempt to get through to them on specific topics, right? So I'd ask you, where is that level of trust? Where is that with the relationship with your mother? Where is it with your father? Do they actually listen to you? when you talk to them. I think there's a lot of parents that cannot get past the dynamic of it being their child, and they're just not going to listen. I think other people have much better relationships. But, getting old, especially I also think there's an age, it's not a specific number, but it's somebody in this age range, especially if they feel like they got dealt a tough hand of cards where they can get to kind of fuck it stage, which is super dangerous and not always a great hang, where if either one of your parents are just like, hey, whatever, like this has sucked the last couple of years, like I don't fucking care, this is all awful, they might not be willing to listen to anything. So I don't know, by the way, if there's something, is the medication possible? Like, could that be changed at all?
Love potion
with this? Yeah. So I think you would say to the dad, Ceruti talking about old people today, man. You fired up.
No, I'm just saying.
I think, again, it's not the solution part of it, but I would figure out first and foremost, do they want to save it at all? And if it's only one person, a 1-1 tie is a loss in this situation. The other person that doesn't want to be with the other person doesn't go, well, it's a tie, I guess I'm in. So this is, tie goes to the one that wants out. I would really figure out where your father's at with this, because this is going to completely disrupt their world. Even if it's what they want, it's a huge, huge change for a routine that's been the same now for about 50 years. But I think if they ultimately, it cannot be fixed, I think you have to embrace it and look at it only as a positive. You are not young kids. This is not as disruptive as when kids are younger going through divorce. Even though sometimes you can look back at things and say divorce might have been better than parents getting back together. So I have to hope that he actually will listen to you. I would hope he'd be willing to listen to you if he wants to salvage this. And honestly, maybe the 50-year anniversary could be something where you go, you know what? Look, let's build to a positive. It's an incredible number, even if things are rocky right now. But let's start trying to figure out a way to celebrate this thing and have a reason to celebrate it, because you two need to get on the same fucking page. Because I don't think you have the right to say, hey, you should stay together if they don't want to stay together. I think all of us kind of understand it. You likely understand that too. I just think it's very different depending on who the other person is listening, especially at this age, of whether or not they want to listen to their child. Because I think some parents will forever have a very hard time with that.
This was an episode of Everybody Loves Raymond. For anyone who was wondering, Deborah's parents get divorced, dropped the bomb at Christmas, I think. But
bad timing,
tough timing.
Sweep Christmas sweeps though, ratings wise.
Can you just refresh? Like, is this complaints from the mom? Like saying like, I don't know if I can do this, that ma'am. She called him an asshole.
Yeah.
Was it like, was she saying like, I got a guy that I'm talking to about this already, about like,
we don't know any of that. That's massive speculation on your part.
Well, that's what I would ask is like, are they becoming an age where they're just pulling the ripcord on the complaint department, and it's just every time they'll just say how miserable they are, and they're not actually going to hide that anymore. And they're just like, I'm just somebody who complains about my spouse now. Like, I do wonder if did that just change in them and you're not knowing how to deal with it? Or like, is there real like steps they're trying to take to dissolve this union, so to speak? Or is it really just like, yeah, my mom's got a lot of shit to say about my dad now, and my dad just kind of grumbles and shrugs? Like, I just wonder if the dynamics change, that this is what it's going to be forever, and it's actually not going to be a divorce, and they're just telling you more than you've ever cared to know before, and that's just the new phase you're in. I wonder.
Yeah, what sucks too is there's nothing, if they've already decided, there's probably not much you could do, especially the mom. But if like the celebration of the 50th anniversary, like, yes, it's about them and they've made it 50 years, but like maybe you sell it to them as like, can we just try this? And it's a celebration of like all the things you've created, right? Like
us and what? Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah, like it's your whole life. Like, look at the kids you've had. Look at the the grandkids
as a family reunion. There you
go. Kind of. And
remember that maybe trip when you were happy.
yeah. Maybe have to print out some pictures of better times. Who knows? Maybe they'll rekindle some stuff. But because I would also talk to them and be like, what what's your plan after this? Because do you really, to Kyle's point, like, I don't know, maybe there's somebody else and she's just like, whatever, I'm ready to jump ship and be happy for the last however many years of my life.
Oh, wait. When I said, does she have a guy? I meant, is she talking to a lawyer? Like, not like, does she meet a guy at bingo? Yeah, no, that came out wrong. I meant like, is she already like got a legal document drafted?
I thought you meant she's been like, around the nursing homes, like looking for single dudes.
No.
Which, I don't know. I just feel like when you're old, I mean, who knows when I get there, maybe I'll feel differently. But like, do you really want to be alone in the last years of your life? Like, that's what I would talk to my parents about. Like, hey, you could do whatever you want. Like, if you guys are you miserable, then who am I to tell you that you should just keep fighting this out because you're not doing it for the kids anymore. This is you on your own. You're empty nesters you've probably been for a long time. But what's your life going to look like without this partner, without somebody else to just share moments with, even if they're not always happy or fun or whatever? Like, I mean, if you're still getting some joy out of that, does that beat sitting alone in a convalescent home or a house or an apartment by yourself, like hoping that people come to visit you because you've got no other friends? Yeah, like maybe it is a scare tactic. Like, again, if she's miserable, then all right, then you maybe your answer. But I don't know. I just feel like in life sometimes, yeah, like not everyone's always happy all the time. But is the alternative better? It's the alternative of being alone and miserable when you've been with somebody your whole life for 50 years. Is that better? That's the conversation I would have. And maybe
that's why I think my TV show, Should I Get Divorced, would work. You get like 3 weeks travel. It's kind of like Alone, where you set up your own video camera, but this time you're in the south of France. Like first few nights, you're like, man, I think I could get used to this. And I don't know, maybe day 16, 17, you miss cuddling.
Yeah.
You're like, you know what? I didn't have it so bad. I still think that show works, has legs. There's a chance. They would do it in Sweden. 25 years old, 5'10", 220. Though I'm working on that with a caloric deficit and intermittent fasting. Player comp is a less athletic 2009 Cavs Wally Zerbiak. Since high school, though, I've mostly stopped playing basketball and moved into ultimate frisbee and disc golf pretty heavily. So you haven't played basketball in 8 years?
Sounds like it.
Okay. Yeah. No notable gym stats, though you may have guessed that when you read the ultimate frisbee and disc golf part. Yep. Okay. My wife and I live in an apartment in the Midwest with our 2-month-old baby, an anxiety-ridden dog. Our neighbor was recently evicted. We're not sure if it was related to his damage to property, use of drugs, drug dealing, housing tenants in our leases, many traffic violations like 6-month expired tags, or stealing a guy's ID. Okay, so this guy is not locked in to the world of forms and just general maintenance of life.
Right.
Hey, some people are really good at that stuff when they're younger. Others are not. This guy brings attention from sketchy characters, so we have a Ring camera which just happens to look in the direction of his door. Between the time he was evicted and his clean-out day, which is about 2 weeks, a maintenance guy employed by the apartment complex entered the apartment and let out a loud, "Whoa!" clearly amazed at the awful condition it was in. Yeah, I would not guess this thing would be clean. A day or two later, he brought by a group of 3 friends around 10 o'clock to check it out. They're kind of kids who are too cool to hang out with a robotics club, but not cool enough to hang out with the edgy stoners. What lane is that? I used to not like Metallica because I didn't like the kids that wore the jean jackets that had Metallica patches on them when I was in high school. And again, this is my age showing, but when Metallica, Megadeth, some guys are super into Queensryche were coming onto the scene, they would get jean jacket patches. This was the one year I was in Connecticut, not in Martha's Vineyard. And, a lot of guys had boy band hair. No, I shouldn't say boy band because that's hot. I'm talking like death metal hair. And I immediately was just out on any of that heavy stuff, even though I learned to like it a lot later on. But based on just the stereotype, I'm kind of thinking maybe, because like that was pretty much a layup. Like, hey, I'm not good at sports. I'm not really good at anything. All right, I love fucking death metal. Here's my jacket. Here's my patch. Going to grow it out. A little peach fuzz. Probably start smoking cigarettes, and I'll start making out with somebody.
Yeah, that was 9 Inch Nails. That was 9 Inch Nails for me.
That'd be great if adults could do that more, right? Like, it's just not really going that great for me. All right. Well, now I'm super into this band. I mean, I guess adults can do that, but it just
there's actually no one that's going to ask, what the hell are you doing? If you could just retreat into that whole world, actually.
Or would people ask more questions if you were an adult? Because it's like, what do you do?
Are you talking about you and Tool right now?
No, I've only seen him like 5 times. And by the way, going to their shows, I don't have an urge to make out a ton.
Okay.
Show.
If you catch my drift.
One time I was in like the sound area, where they're running the sound through the whole thing. So it was kind of like roped off for guests of the band. And it was an outdoor show and guys that were squeezed up against the fences on all four sides. I was like, I don't know. I think I had the set list or something. And somebody said, like, what's the next song to me? And I was like, oh, I think it's this. And he was like, fucking right. And the way he looked at me, like I looked into hell. It was just a person. And I went, I do love this band, but yep, I'm not going to make a ton of friends here today. Okay. All right. So those are the guys that are in there. We might have made this email more confusing. A day or two later, Shocker. He brings the guys by. All right. On clean out day, the neighbor left for a few hours with a large suitcase sitting outside to come back later for. All right. So the guy that was just terrible at any sort of adult stuff, he's cleaning out his place. He leaves the large suitcase sitting outside to come back later for it, which is what this guy would do. Before the neighbor came back, the maintenance kid came by again with two new friends. One of them was intrigued by the bag, going through it and finding a large knife he liked a lot. He stuffed it in his pocket for himself before they toured the trash apartment again. My question is, do I insert myself into a situation that I would be totally unaware of if it weren't for the camera and report the maintenance guy to the apartment office, or do I leave it alone, hoping this guy enters one too many apartments and does himself in? On one hand, I can tell this kid is a major punk. He's abusing his power by using his keys to get in apartments for his own benefit. On the other hand, if he's really willing to look cool for his friends and misuse his keys, he'll likely get in trouble on his own sooner rather than later. Thanks, guys. Love the pod. Ooh. By the way, it says, thanks to Ceruti for making me aware of holding our baby in both arms to equally keep the biceps even.
Don't think I deserve credit for that, but thank you.
All right, Kyle. I feel like this has...
What, I'm resident knife guy?
You kind of are. You used to steal knives.
Have you ever stolen a knife? Yeah.
Don't even answer that.
I don't know. I really don't know. Wouldn't be on the radar. It would be a blip if it was, but... This is tough. I mean, you got the no snitching
what kind of
things.
Knife? Benchmade? You're like, man, this knife's sweet.
It's like a dagger.
Sweet ass tactical knife just in case.
Yeah. I got a new knife in my connection. Actually, new knife. You? Yeah. Hold on, I got it right here.
Let's see it, buddy.
Big one.
Oh my god, that thing's huge.
Buddy was moving across the country, so he couldn't take it with him. I was like, yeah, that's for me.
What do you do with it?
What kind of sheath you got there,
I'm not
buddy?
Sure. I mean, it's got like the saw in it too. Like, I'm not really.
Yeah.
It's good looking.
You do a lot with that.
Yeah. I don't think I can leave the house with it though. So we'll have to just wait for some action here.
Yeah, I don't even know if that's legal. That's how dangerous this
spot is. I think it's definitely
getting.
above the hand, the 5-finger rule or whatever.
You have to blur that out in the post edit.
I don't know. This goes against.
Don't mail that to anyone.
This goes against a lot of principles here, right? I mean, there's the don't snitching thing. But then you've got the do unto others thing. And like, I don't know, are you guys going on vacation anytime soon? Like, is he going to be messing around your place? It'd be good to get this bad apple out of there. I don't know. Like, I don't know if maybe I would talk to the guy who moved out, right? Who's probably not super happy with the arrangement with this complex and maybe would take it into his own hands. And you're like, hey, just so you know, like, I just saw this thing. And then he's the person that deals with it. Yeah, but then you have to connect with
that guy. You have to.
Well, you've been living next to him forever. I don't know. Maybe the last thing you want is that guy to have a good memory of you. Like, hey, remember when I looked out for you, knife guy? But I guess the one thing is like, I don't know if I'd want to go to bat. I don't know like how in this guy is with the comp. Like, is he somebody's nephew? Is he somebody that like, is closer to the management that it's not going to be as simple as, oh, this guy did the wrong thing. Thanks for reporting it. We're going to get rid of him. Did you just make an enemy at the one place where you go home to sleep? I don't know. But at the same time, it would bother me that this guy is, deciding when it's okay to use your keys to get into people's houses, which is a fear I've always had any apartment I lived in. But you just kind of like, all right, if I can't catch him, then I can't think about this for too long. But now you know it. So yeah, this is tough. I don't know. I might have told the previous tenant just to see if he wants to rile things up. But I don't know. I don't know if I'd want to insert myself at the top of some list with this maintenance guy.
What's like one positive from doing anything in this situation?
Right. You're right.
I think you nailed it.
Really tough.
Yeah. All right. Because I've been playing out scenarios, be like, do you tell the guy that stole the knife, maintenance guy, be like, hey, look, ring camera, dumbass. I saw you take the knife. Here's the thing. The guy that lived there sucked. I don't care that you took a knife from him. It looks like a pretty sweet knife. Totally get it. But don't do that. So that way it's a non-threatening way, but you're putting awareness in him that it's like, I can see everything that you're doing, which I would imagine 100% discourage him from ever messing with your apartment. And maybe he's actually smart enough, despite some of the resume that you've given us here, that he's smart enough to see your Ring camera and to decide, well, I can't go in there with my buddies, because I know that's kind of what you're thinking about. But I think ultimately Ceruti nailed it. Like, the Ring camera is your insurance against this whole thing for the most part. And what's the point of talking to anybody?
Yeah, I think you're right. Okay. I made it too complicated. Thanks for bringing it back.
It's all right.
All right, we got it. Thanks to Wargon. I guess in the subtitles it says thanks to Oregon. Somebody
it does. I've seen that on Spotify. Yep. So thanks to Oregon.
Love you, Gene. Love it.
It is on brand. Yeah.
Yeah. Bend. A lot of history there. So that'll do it for us. Thanks to Kyle and Ceruti. Check out our YouTube page. First YouTube-only content coming out this week. Subscribe to the podcast. Ryen, Russillo, Spotify.